Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. We are back on day 4 of the Alec Murdaugh murder trial. He is accused of murdering his wife and son back in June 2021. We are in the first day of witness testimony. This morning during the AM court session, we had testimony from 2 first responding police officers with the accompanying body cam. We could hear that body cam footage. We could hear what Alec Murdaugh was saying to the officers, how he sounded. We did not see that. That is not going to be streamed and available, and that's probably good. This is a fairly horrific crime scene with 2 victims that were shot, and the defense has continued to graphically describe that. So that is be mindful. The defense will be describing these crimes in their own graphic way. Court is set to resume here in just a few minutes with more of the state's witnesses. I don't know how many witnesses the state will call in their case, so I can't quite predict how many days we will see the state's evidence. But we will see it for at least the rest of this week, and if not longer. In this case, we will have, and we already had opening statements yesterday, we will get the prosecution witnesses. Each witness will have a direct examination, a cross-examination, a redirect examination, and potentially a recross examination. What we've learned is that the prosecution is establishing this crime scene, what was secured at the time, what was taken from the crime scene, what was seen, how Alec Murdaugh was treated. And what we've seen from the defense is more questions along the line of, you didn't preserve this crime scene. Everybody was just walking through it. You weren't trying to solve this murder. You weren't searching for a murderer. And I think that's going to go to the defense's argument that the police had done a rush to judgment and they just believed Alec Murdaugh was the murderer and they did nothing else. I do say to that, and I am a former prosecutor, but I do say to that, if these officers believed that he was the murderer and rolled up to this scene and he was standing there gun in hand, what they wouldn't have done, he didn't have the gun in his hand when they rolled up. We know it was somewhere else, but it was close. They wouldn't have just secured the gun. They would have secured him as well. They didn't. His brother showed up. He talked to his brother. Another person showed up. He talked to them. He was walking around this crime scene while they were doing their investigation. He was not handcuffed. He was not put in a police vehicle. The police clearly did not view him as a potential threat or a potential accused at this point. We heard in testimony and in questioning that they were moving Paul Murdaugh's body to see if there was any weaponry near him, to see if this had been a case where he took his mother's life and then took his own life. And we're starting to hear some rumblings that might have been what the police wondered about. First off, we've heard the nature of the injuries on Paul Murdaugh, so I can understand why they might have supposed that. However, if you have a circumstance where that is the case, there would be a weapon generally right there with the second party, and that was not there. So with that, I hope we have our little tech hiccups resolved. So we're going to roll the intro. Court will start in its own sweet tea time. Court is supposed to start at 2:15 on the East. The court gives a little bit of zhuzh room. I appreciate it. I need the zhuzh. We're going to answer some of the questions from this morning, and we're going to go from there. Baxter said over 200 witnesses on the witness list. They won't call them all. The witness list is everybody. So let us go ahead and roll the intro. It's good to see you, law nerds. I'm glad you're back for this afternoon of trial. Let's see how long court goes today.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
All right, so court is not back yet. I'm going to answer some questions and we will keep going. So what else do we know about this case? For those of you just coming in, Alec Murdaugh is a disgraced South Carolina attorney accused of killing his wife and son. What we have learned so far is that he gave multiple statements to police. The defense said he was aggressively questioned. So far, the police on the crime scene have seemed to me to be professional but empathetic. I have not seen the police even have a hint of they think this dude did it and need to put him in a police car and deal with it. Not even a LaCroix whiffed of it. So with that, the defense is going to be doing their job. They're trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case. And the prosecution does have a big case ahead of them. The defense is doing a very good job of trying to bring this back to how violent this crime was, how brutal this crime was. That is their perception of this case, and bring it back to that. Keep reminding the jury of that, and then arguing a loving father couldn't and wouldn't do that. He is not the person who did it. And the prosecution has to get through, why would this person do that? No. Legally, the prosecution does not have to prove motive, but this is a circumstantial case and it's a horrific accusation. So I think the prosecution has to get near that for a jury to understand. Because what's not going to happen is, why would someone do this? And the prosecution go, because things, that's not going to work. This morning, we've already heard multiple discussions about the boat accident. For those of you, and while we have a minute before court starts, for those of you that have not followed this case from the beginning, I do have breakdowns on my podcast, The Emily Show, with a timeline of this case. And elsewhere, there are multiple podcasts on it. The Murdaugh Murders podcast by Mandy Matney is a very, very in-depth look into just this case. It is a single subject podcast. We also have an HBO documentary. There has been multiple other coverings of this case. That was my Waterloo, not my LaCroix that was like getting stuck in the throat. Emily, you don't drink fizzy water when you're going to be talking on the internet all day. But sometimes I do. So the boat case that they are bringing up, because when first responders showed up at the crime scene, now remember, from the time of the 911 call, and we don't have the time of the 911 call in evidence yet. The jury does not know when in this timeline 911 was called. The jury knows that first responders took about 20 minutes to get there, and they were lights and sirens because that's how far out and away this property is. Out and away. So took them about 20 minutes to get there from the time dispatch let them know. That seems about right, because they arrived on scene at about 10:26. We know from other reporting the 911 call came in around 10:06 p.m. So I'm not surprised that timing is just kind of right there. The jury doesn't know what time the 911 call came in. Alec Murdaugh presumably was around this property or with his wife and son for 20 minutes. 20 minutes before they came. So by the time the police came, he's got a whole lot to say to them when they show up on scene. And one of the first things he says is, my son was in this boat crash and he's been, I don't remember the exact language. He's been getting stuff. He was punched over it. Like, people have been saying stuff to him. So insinuating that Paul was the subject to some type of harassment or issues because of the criminal investigation into the boat case. The boat case is a boating under the influence case. Paul Murdaugh was charged with being the driver in a boating under the influence case that killed Mallory Beach and injured 2 others. So 3 counts in that case. So he was pending criminal trial on that. Or trial wasn't, I don't remember if the trial date was set, but he was pending the criminal case on that. He had already been charged with that. Then we also have civil cases going on, civil cases with regard to Alec's involvement, the fact that he was driving the boat, the liquor store that provided the alcohol, the clerk at the store that provided the alcohol. So there were multiple civil cases going on with the boat case as well. So the second the police show up, Alec Murdaugh, who again is wandering around for 20 minutes or so between the 911 call and the police getting there, is like, I know this has to do with the boat case. I know it. It was like, with a certainty, this has to do with that. So Alec Murdaugh saying his family essentially is being targeted. His son was being targeted because of this boat case. And I think that's what the defense will continue to argue. And we will see what else they have other than a supposition. I don't know if they'll be able to get into evidence anything other than Alec Murdaugh's statement. He was punched because of this. You can't ask Paul about what had gone on because of the boat case. There's no one else to ask about what Paul was suffering because of the boat case, other than the statements Alec Murdaugh makes to police. Now, again, the statements Alec Murdaugh makes to police are not hearsay because he is the defendant. So for all of you saying court's back, I have 2 feeds up, And one feed, interesting. One feed has no court, one feed does. So we'll switch feeds. All right. Thank you, chat. Let me go and switch. We'll switch feeds because one feed is up and one is not. Uh-oh. Oh, no. I had to switch browsers because of our tech issues, and that is making sharing a little more difficult. All right. The jury is coming in. The other feed did not pick up yet. Let me go silence the other feed. Because this feed, I was playing this feed. No, it doesn't look like it was live, but it was. All right, that feed's just going to have to wait because it's not playing. And we're going to go with a single feed for now, and then we'll switch back if this starts. There we go. Thanks, y'all. I had this feed playing. I heard it. And here we are. If this sound, I'm going to take this down real quick. If this sound fucks up on me again, though, I might switch back to a different feed that only has one camera. Let me go pull that feed up real quick. So we're waiting for the jury to come in. And we'll go from there. But yeah, if we need to go to a single camera feed to get better audio, I might do that because I don't know how much my ears can take. Some of this audio, man, was absolutely brutal today. Brutal. So I've got options now. I got options, but this does not seem to be keeping up. All right. We got options, folks. We love an option. And yeah, all right. We hear courtroom rumbling and that's about it. I think I forgot to text the text crew. I'm going to go text the text crew in just a second as we get this pulled up. So that's where we're at. That's why we're talking about the boat case. And that's it. So let's see. Where was Buster? Did they rule him out? I don't know where Buster was. He's sitting in the courtroom as an observer. He's on the defense witness list. And they must have because they must have. Oh, I hear no. Do you guys hear audio? I hear no audio. Hold on. Hopefully when this comes in, y'all hear audio. If not, I'll try my best to fix it. Miguelina, can we hear courtroom? I'm not seeing it. It's really low. Yeah, all right. Let me try one more time. This is why I hate they're swearing the witness in. This is why I hate having to switch tabs.
First name Tanish, last name Bryson-Smith, Bryson-Smith.
Oh, let me see.
Could you tell the jury where you work?
This is a different attorney questioning. They're talking about where they work.
For Hampton County E911.
17 years.
So this is the 911 operator.
What is E911?
Emergency services dispatch center.
And what do you do there?
Oh,
Currently,
hold on.
I
That's
am in
me.
the director position, just stated in December.
Hold, please. Hold, please.
I am over the management of day-to-day operations of the 911
Is that
dispatch center
better?
for Hampton County, including budgeting, payroll, like I said, day-to-day operations, and record keeping, recordings, etc.
We fixed it.
Does the Hampton County 911 keep records in the normal course of business?
We do.
This is business
And
records for the 911
what kind of
call.
recordings are these?
We have audio recordings from 911 phone
So
calls.
this is the 911
administrative
call. We'll get a
phone
time on
calls,
this.
as well as radio recordings from our radios from the field.
Are all 911 calls recorded?
They are.
And how are these calls stored?
They're stored on our
This is the
log
business
data
levels
recording
exception.
systems.
So this is business
How long are
records
they stored
exception.
for?
They are laying the foundation to get the business records
And who
in.
has access to those records?
I do.
Does anybody else?
No, ma'am.
Just you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
She's the
And
only.
how do you
no,
access
she's
the records?
the record keeper.
There is a database in my office that I have to log into to access
Yeah, I
any
know it's
recordings
loud.
that is requested.
We're working on it.
All right.
So this is the business records foundation that they're
Sometimes
laying
do
to get the 911 call in.
calls from another county, such as Colleton County, come into Hampton County?
They do.
And why does that happen?
I appreciate this
Cell
attorney
phones
standing
pick up
just
on the
there.
nearest PSAP based upon the location of that cell phone at the time of call. PSAP meaning Public Safety Answering System.
Okay? And why does it pick up on,
Sorry.
Of a phone call or a phone when that call is made. that cell phone picks up at that tower, and the tower, wherever the nearest PSAP
So we will hear the 911
is
call.
where that cell phone will be routed to.
And what do you do when you in Hampton County receive a call from Colleton that's supposed to be going to Colleton County?
We transfer
very
that
common,
call out to Colleton County.
because they have to lay the
All right,
foundation for the 911 call to come
Back on
in.
June 7th
This
of
is very, very common and very
2021,
regular.
did you receive a call from Alec Murdaugh?
We did.
And that call came into Hampton County, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what did happen to that call when it came in?
Once it was determined that the call was located, the location of the emergency was Colleton County, we transferred that call out to Colleton County.
And you determined the Colleton County location how?
Based upon the numerics
Address.
and the address that was given, once we plug that information into our system, it populates in Colleton County.
This is the prosecution. In the line of questioning during the prosecution's case in chief, prosecutors will always go first.
What's marked as State's Exhibit
So-
9.
Yes, this is tremendously common. Sometimes you'll waive the foundation, but they need to explain why the call came in here and then went there and the records were kept elsewhere. So this is very, very usual. So this is our 911 operator who's going to testify for the business records to get in the 911 call. We're going to hear Alec Murdaugh's 911 call after this when he talks about being up there, about it being bad, about checking for a pulse.
State's Exhibit 9 is admitted without objection.
So this is the CD being admitted into
State's
evidence, and then they'll
Exhibit
play
9
it.
is a disc. Can you tell us
Is a
what is
di-
on that disc?
The initial 911 call that came in on the night in question.
No, it is
And how
not
do you know that
Colleton
call
County.
is on that
It's
disc?
I was
Colleton.
able to listen to it, and I dated it and initialed on the 23rd of January.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move Exhibit 9 into evidence.
My hair was bugging me.
Already been admitted without objection.
I like that the judge reserves this to ask for everybody. It's already been admitted. You can hear him just be like, we're already there. We're already there. So they're going to play the 911 call. So haven't seen a CD in years. Yes. It makes it easier, though, to track evidence than having digital. This is great. So, I've had some lunch and my hair's up, so I feel much better than I did this morning. My hair was bugging the shit out of me all morning.
My wife and child got bad. Okay, you said 4147 Mobile Road in Allison?
Oh, it's hard.
Sir? You said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison? Yes, sir. 4147 Moselle Road. Stay on the line with me, okay? Yes, sir.
I'm
Stay on the line
sorry.
with me, okay?
I'm sorry. They're transferring the call. That's why you hear it. This call is also available on the internet.
I'm still here. Stay on the line. I'm still here, okay? Collison, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line, caller from 4147 Mobile
It's echoing in
Road.
court.
He's advising that his wife and child was shot. Mr. Murdaugh, go ahead and call the Collison. It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
How did they shoot? Did they shoot themselves?
Oh, no. Hell no.
I've never heard that part of this 911 tape. Ever.
Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennel.
Also,
I can tell that.
And did
I
you
can
see
tell that he's
anyone?
shot in the head, and he's shot really bad. He's shot really bad.
I don't know what that banging is. I've never heard this.
The state
Parts
has no
of
further
this.
questions for this witness.
By the defense.
There should be no questions. There should be no questions.
Cross-examination.
Court's indulgence.
Well, did you fall asleep, Dick? There should be no questions. Is that an accurate representation of the audio? There should be no question. There's no questions. It's a 911 call. What do you need to question?
Just a couple questions, Your Honor.
Why?
So explain to me how this works. A call came into you in what county?
Hampton County.
Hampton County.
Correct.
And how, when you dial 911, how does it determine what county to send it to?
I withdraw
When
my
you dial
annoyance.
911, the cell phone company picks up that
No,
it's a
put her
911
back
call
on. I
being
wanna see
placed.
her.
They hit the nearest cell phone tower, and based upon the location of that cell phone tower,
I withdraw
is
my-
routed to the nearest PSAP, or public safety answering system.
Where
So
was
the
his
nearest
cell phone when he
tower-
called
Tower
911?
to Moselle would
Was
be...
Walterboro Highway Tower.
Okay, okay. And you're from Hampton?
I am.
That's not you on the phone, is it?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know the Murdaughs, or do you know Alec Murdaugh and his family?
Not too
Irrelevant.
much, yes. I mean, a little bit, but.
Okay.
Irrelevant. Irrelevant. Asking about where the cell tower is a
Anything
good
further?
question. I withdraw my annoyance.
You may step down. Thank you.
My annoyance is withdrawn. The cell tower is a very fair question. Why did the call go into Hampton County? What cell tower?
Call your next witness.
But it sounds like the cell tower nearest to Moselle is a tower that would route 911 to Hampton County. And this is the problem with cell phones, is sometimes you go to call 911 and it doesn't call where you need to be. So that's fair. That's fair.
You affirm the testimony about to give the court shall be the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
There were new parts of that 911
State
call.
your name again for the record.
Spell your last name.
Angela Stallings, Stallings.
Hi, Captain Stallings.
Good afternoon.
Could you please tell the jury where you work?
I work at the Colleton County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. And how long have you worked there?
I have approximately 15 years with the Sheriff's Office.
What are some of your duties and responsibilities at the Sheriff's Office?
I am the Administrative Services Captain. I oversee the 911 Center. I'm over our Civil Process Division, Court Security.
I like the
Our
order.
School Resource Officers.
I
Our
like the
Sex
order
Offender
of the
Registry
witnesses.
Division.
This makes sense.
Training, supply, and the hiring process.
She's the
And
admin
records.
captain.
You have quite a lot of duties there.
Yes, ma'am.
In the course of your duties, do you keep records of 911 calls?
We do.
So she
Can
also
you
keeps
explain to the
records.
jury what happens when a 911 call comes into Colleton County?
Yes, ma'am. So when a call comes into Colleton County, it hits our recorder system. As soon as the call connects to the recorder and starts ringing, our recorder automatically starts recording automatically. It starts recording before we even answer the phone.
They're laying the full foundation for that
And
911
is a
recording.
recording of all 911 calls that come into Colleton County Center kept?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
And how are those records kept?
They're kept on our server that is the Carolina Recording Software System
So how's
that
it
we use.
stored?
Who has access to those records?
Myself and one other employee.
So this is again laying foundation for that 911 call to come in as evidence.
Is it normal for y'all to have calls routed from Hampton County to
I
Colleton
love
County?
this so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it normal for y'all
And
to do it that
why
way?
does that happen?
Depending on the location of the call within the county, we border several counties. Depending on if it's a cell phone that is calling 911, depending on the closest available cell tower,
This is what
it
they're
will
talking
hit
about.
that tower. Wherever that tower is located, it routes to that PSAP.
And we just defined
Right.
a PSAP.
On
We don't
June
need to do it again.
7th of 2021, did Colleton County receive a transferred 911 call from Hampton County?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And
You're
what
going to have it
time
back
did
at the
that
end of
call
this
come
trial.
in?
We're all going to have one at the end of this trial.
May I look at my notes?
Yes.
We're all going to have a southern accent at the end of this. So, this is just establishing further the 911 call. The part of the 911 call I had not heard before because the previous 911 call we've heard, I
That
think
call
it's
came in
edited.
at 22:07:09, which is 10:07:09 p.m.
10:07.
And the notes
That's
you're
what we
referencing
needed.
up there, is that some kind of report that's generated when the call comes in, or what are you looking at?
Yes, ma'am. This is a report that's generated through our recorder software.
There's the time.
So you received a call from 10:07 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Who was that call from?
Hampton County.
Okay, and who was the caller?
The caller was Alex Murdaugh.
So the call came in to Hampton County at 10:06, came in to Colleton County at 10:07, and was recorded. So now the jury knows the exact time that the 911 call, and she's the record keeper for the time. Notice
Takes Exhibit
the,
11.
the other 911 operator only gave, and this might be more of the 911 call, the other operator only gave the foundation for the call coming into Hampton County and the recording.
Do you recognize Takes Exhibit 11?
This
Yes,
is
ma'am,
another
I do.
recording.
What is it?
It is a disc of the 911 call.
So this is another
How do
recording.
you know that?
It has my
And then the
initials
time.
and date that I reviewed it.
And this is a true and accurate depiction of the 911 call made by Alec Murdaugh.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Your Honor, at this time I'd move Takes Exhibit 11 into evidence.
I'm just going to watch Sweet Home Alabama this weekend.
Submitted without objection.
We're going to need some Reese Witherspoon after all this shit anyway. So here's another 911 call. So a second 911 CD. And this one's from Colleton County. Okay. I'm going to answer some questions while they're getting that 911 tape queued up. Question. So this person can, on this, I'm going to curse. She asked permission to look at her notes and refresh her recollection as to the date. This report would have been turned over.
June 7, 2021.
And the report,
22 hours.
the report will be
9
evidence.
seconds.
The report from Dr. Hughes is not evidence. Y'all, I'm sorry.
No, ma'am, they're on the ground out at my kennel.
Okay, and did you see anyone?
In the head, and he shot really bad. He shot her.
Okay, where is he shot at?
This audio is horrible.
You get blood everywhere.
There's blood everywhere.
His brain.
That's better.
Face down, I started to turn a little bit. It's got a hole in her head.
Okay, is he breathing at all?
No, nobody.
Okay, do you see anyone in the area?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Is there any guns near them at all?
No, I just, here.
They call it your house on the outside.
If that's what you're asking, we didn't shoot themselves, ma'am.
What? Call it your house on the outside.
It's white. You can't see it from the road.
Okay, is it a house or mobile home?
It's a house.
Okay, and what is your name?
My name is Alex Murdaugh.
Okay, did you hear anything, or did you come home and find out?
Well, I've been gone. I just came back.
Did you hear anything is an important question.
Okay, and was anyone else supposed to be at your house?
No, ma'am.
Operators doing a great job of asking questions, trying to figure out what the situation is that they're sending officers into.
We're getting somebody out there to you.
So trying to figure out the situation before you send officers into it. There are no dogs barking in this 911 call. That is very up. Oh, wait, there we go. I'm taking notes. He's very quiet in between questions.
Okay, you said about 2 hours ago you talked to them? Approximately, yes, ma'am, approximately. Okay, did she say what they were doing at all? No, I talked to her in person. You talked to her in person? We're getting to my other two. We have to give you questions, don't slow them down, okay?
It's hard to hear the operator.
And you sure they're not breathing? Is he moving at all?
He didn't answer.
He said that she was shot in the head, but what about your son?
He's not answering.
Nobody. They're not. They're going over these food. What is your telephone number? 942-1227. I'm going back to my house just to get a gun just in case.
I'm going back to my house. So he's on the phone at the kennels,
My house.
he says.
And does anything look out of place?
Does anything look out of place?
Not particularly, really, no ma'am. Okay. Look, I know you're upset, Mr. Murdaugh, but I don't want you to get a gun and have a gun out whenever my officers get there, okay? I will not do that.
I know you're upset, but I don't want you to get a gun for when the officers get there.
It's been beaten for months and months and months. He's been hit several times, and do you know who was threatening your son?
This audio is appalling. I'm sorry.
And you don't know the name of who was threatening him at all? My son knows. My son knows. Your son knows who was threatening him? I have another son now. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch through this later and see if I can find a better feed for audio. This is very difficult.
All right, I'm going back down there.
So he went back to the house. He's on the phone with 911 when he went back to the house to get a gun. Is he punching in the code to his car? Or is that 911's code? I don't know. I'm just talking out loud where that code's coming from. Because now it's quiet.
Stallings, there's a break between parts in this call. Why is that?
The way our recorder system is set up, if there is a pause with either the call taker or the caller not talking, the recorder automatically cuts off. As soon as it
So he was
starts
quiet.
to hear someone talking, it automatically kicks back on and starts recording.
So he was quiet. So he got quiet enough that the recorder stopped.
2021.
Oh, it could be the code to the gun safe. That's fair.
13 minutes, 58 seconds.
Could be the code to the house. But he did say he already had the gun before the binking. He said, I have a loaded gun. That sounds like on the operator's end.
Okay, can you do me a favor, Mr. Murdaugh, and turn on the flashers on your car so that way they can see where the kennels are?
That's fair. Turn on the flashers so the officers can find you. So 911's having to field the officers being like, where am I going? That's not uncommon. Now we hear dogs. So he's back up at the kennels.
Do you have your flashes on for me, Mr. Murdaugh?
He sounds far away from the phone.
I don't want you to touch them at all, okay? I don't know if you've already touched them, but I don't want you to touch them just in case they get any kind of evidence, okay?
Don't touch them. I've already touched them to see if they were breathing.
Okay. Well, I just don't want you to move anything just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay?
I've already touched them to see if they were breathing. Interesting.
Okay. And did your son, I know you said that he had been threatened, did your son make report to this at all? Yes, ma'am. He did? And what's your son's name? Paul.
Paul.
I want to call, I need to call some of my family.
I need to call my family. No, you're on the phone with 911, sir.
Do me a favor for me. Whenever you see the officer or the medics, because they're all coming to you, can you put your gun in your vehicle for me?
Yeah, don't put your gun out.
Okay. Well, we have them come and turn on the flashes on your vehicle so they can see you, okay?
Stay on the phone with 911.
You got the flashes on for me? Okay. All right. Just whenever you see them, put your gun up for me, okay? Okay. How old is your son? 22. Okay. All right. We're getting them out there to you, okay?
Dispatch is going to try to keep him on the phone until police arrive. They are going to try to keep him on the call until police arrive so they can make sure that police have found him, or to tell him what to do. Go meet them at the gate or unlock the
Thank you,
gate.
Captain Stallings. The state has no further questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So that was difficult audio because it was just so poor.
Thank you. You may step down.
The defense has no questions. That's appropriate. And then he got off the phone. It's very interesting to me that he said, I need to call my family. It's interesting because my first thought is, don't you
your
want to
next witness.
stay on the phone with 911 to be like, where is everyone? Where are the police? Where is the help? But it sounded like he wanted to call and get his family there, which is interesting. In the first part of the 911 call, we heard him say there's blood everywhere more than once. And then we heard him say that he's already touched them to check for breathing. And
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible.
then we also hear over and over and over that he has
Swear
no
affirm that
blood
the
on
testimony
him.
about to give the court shall be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Take a seat in the witness stand. State your name again for the record.
Which is very interesting that he's got, you would expect some blood from fingers and stuff.
Barry McRoy, McRoy.
McRoy.
Chief McRoy, could you please tell the jurors where you work?
Work for Colleton County Fire and Rescue.
And what is your position?
I'm the fire chief.
The fire chief of Colleton County Fire and Rescue?
That is correct.
And how long have you worked at Colleton County Fire and Rescue?
29 years.
And about how many scenes do you think you have responded to over the years?
I have no idea. Many thousand.
What are some of the training that you need to do to be a paramedic or respond with fire and rescue?
Well, that has changed greatly over the years, but presently, to be a paramedic, you have to have been an EMT for, we recommend 2 years, which that's about a 500-hour course, and then you take a paramedic course, which is about 1,500 hours. In Colleton County, we require people to be cross-trained, so they have a 500-hour firefighter course as well.
Because they are both.
And are you yourself a paramedic?
I am,
And how long have you been a paramedic?
since 1981.
What are would be the normal procedures when responding to a gunshot, to treat gunshot wounds or to a shooting?
Well, when you initially respond, the law enforcement that's responsible for that jurisdiction typically clears the scene to make sure that it's safe for the other responders. When we arrive, we want to evaluate the patients to make sure that, if they've got some injuries that we can treat, we treat them, and we transport them to the closest trauma center.
So if someone has been shot, what would you normally do to initially treat that person?
We would control their bleeding, protect their airway, get them transported as quickly as possible. It may involve starting IVs. In Colleton County, we carry blood, so we could administer blood to the patient if they required it.
That's interesting.
Did you respond to Moselle Road on June 7th of 2021?
I did.
And tell us about what you did when you got there.
I was on my way home from work, and I heard the sheriff's department on their radio dispatch units to the address in question, and they advised that there was 2 people shot. Shortly thereafter, they dispatched fire rescue units, and we have a standard protocol of what they send. There were multiple patients, so they dispatched 2 ambulances and put a helicopter on standby, and then a supervisor is also dispatched. We also send the closest fire station, which in that case was the one from Highlandton. I responded from Walterboro, and I did arrive ahead of everybody else. Dispatch had told us not to go onto the scene, so I staged about the 3900 block. And a few minutes later, a deputy passed me, and I went in behind the deputy, which was Mr. Green.
Because they didn't know if there was another shooter and the scene wasn't
What
secure.
did you see when you were driving onto the scene?
It was really dark. Had a long dirt driveway, and when we arrived, there was some kennels off to the left, and like a big barn with a 3-lane lean-to on the right-hand side.
I get a better sense now, which is nice. So, I'm not surprised that dispatch was asked to wait till officers secured the scene at a shooting. You never know. Though 911 did ask in the 911 call, did they shoot themselves? Which, again, a reasonable question for 911 to ask. Dispatch tried to keep Murdaugh on the phone and tried to keep Murdaugh talking, tried to figure out what was going on at the scene before officers went in to give the officers as much information as they had. So we now know that the EMS arrived, they had a helicopter on standby, and they had 2 ambulances in case people needed to be transported, because just because you are shot doesn't mean that you won't survive. So that's where we are at in the afternoon. So the 911 calls were very interesting. We heard more from 911 than we have heard previously. And I imagine that, well, I'm going to go back through and try to re-listen to those to see if I can get more information, because the audio on those was peaking. It was rough. So I will try to go back through those and see if there's more information. I'll put that in
I'm going to show you
the podcast.
what's been marked. This takes exhibits.
Because those were rough.
51, 49, 24.
They're going back
And
through more
21.
pictures.
I just ask you to take a look at these pictures and tell me, are you familiar with those pictures?
Yes, ma'am. This does appear to be the accident scene.
These
Accident
are,
scene?
True and accurate depictions of
I think he's used to responding to accidents.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, this time I would move states 51, 49, 24,
That's a look.
and 21 into evidence, which takes exhibits 24 and 51 being sealed with the agreed upon placeholders.
So they're putting
You're admitted without objection.
placeholders are being put in lieu of more graphic photos, so that
How
when
to observe the victims
they are sealed.
when you got to the scene.
Deputy Green went through the scene first. He actually drove a little ways in between the kennels and the lean-to. It was very dark, so he needed his headlights to see what was going on there. There was animals in the kennels. I don't know how many, but
so he
there was
drove
also
in
some
because he needed his
chickens
lights. That's interesting.
fluttering around on the equipment on the right-hand side. The body of a younger Male subject was face down by the kennels. He had some very severe injuries to the head. And there was a female subject at the end of the lean-to. She was also face down with severe injuries to her head. And there was a gentleman standing off a little distance away from it, and he was on a cell phone and seemed very upset.
Did you recognize that gentleman?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that?
Alex Murdaugh.
And how did you recognize him?
I have met him in the past on a professional basis because we have had to do depositions and such with his law firm.
Because he's a personal injury attorney, and accidents
Exhibit
are what they do a
21.
lot. So I'm not surprised by that.
Can you describe what the jury is looking at in this picture?
It sounds like
On
there
the
are
left-hand
no
side
lights.
of the photograph is the covered body of Paul Murdaugh. And the down towards the end of the lean-to is, you can see the covered body of Miss Maggie Murdaugh.
And those bodies appear to be covered with pink sheets.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, were those sheets there when you got there?
No, ma'am, we got those off the ambulance and covered up the bodies.
And why did you do that?
We typically do it to, to shield the bodies from the view of the public. There were a lot of people showing up there. The family was on the scene, and people just really don't
Dignity.
need to see that.
They do it for dignity. This estate is over 1,700 acres.
Please describe what the jury's viewing.
That is the body of Paul, and he is laying face down at the entrance to, there's like a little utility room at the kennels. He is laying down with, you can see there's substantial damage to his head with a lot of blood around his head and what appeared to be his brain down there around his ankles.
And this is how you found Paul.
That is correct.
Okay. And you said that appears to be his brain down there by his foot?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the medical
And,
first responder.
At this point,
There will be some graphic
did you check,
testimony.
his pulse?
I did not check his pulse. He and his mother both had injuries that we consider incompatible with life. There was a lot of coagulation there where the blood had congealed.
Oh.
And they were not currently bleeding, which would indicate they did not have a heartbeat. And
They already bled
obviously
out.
with his type of injuries, he, is not, any way you could sustain his life.
Incompatible with life is a very professional way of saying that.
State's Exhibit 51.
Coagulation's
That is,
interesting.
Miss Maggie, and
That will give us some of the time.
she also had severe injuries to her head. You can also see the congealed blood around the bottom where her face is, and she had a hole in her head to where you could actually see inside of her head cavity.
Was it necessary to check Mrs. Murdaugh's pulse or perform any life-saving treatment?
No, ma'am. And she also had injuries that were not sustainable.
In State's
Incompatible.
Exhibit 49. That's just where,
That's the lean-to, and that's Miss Maggie's body in front of the little side-by-side.
Ooh. He is describing it, to be completely
thank
fair.
you, I have no further questions.
This
for
witness
this
is
witness.
describing it in a very professional, somewhat sterile manner. This is what I would expect from a first responder. It's just,
Cross-examination.
it's a lot.
Just one moment.
So it's a lot of information. Be glad we're not seeing the pictures. The jury's going to have to see them. So it truly is what it is. And that's, I mean, I've had crime scenes with brains, not just in shootings, but in accidents. This is not something, unfortunately, not something new to this witness, which is why you just see him giving you just the facts. So he absolutely sounds empathetic. Yeah. So we'll learn more about the timeline when the coroner testifies.
Fire rescue, correct?
That is correct.
And you, in the past, have had dealings with Alex Murdaugh in a professional capacity with his law firm, correct?
That is correct.
So you recognized him, and you've seen him before, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was his demeanor grieving, distraught, upset?
He seemed to be very upset, yes, sir.
Very upset. Now, I've got just a very few questions for you. But when you responded, and I'm going to try to get the picture, I think.
Don't you have it in your hand for this witness? Where is your folder for each witness? You've done a lot of trials, my guy. Like, each witness gets a folder, and generally on the folder I have the exhibits, my questions, note paper, and you open the folder, and then everything's just in your folder, and you take it out of your banker box, and you just do. Why are we looking for things?
So,
I don't know if this is part of his strategy. This might be strategy. It might be, it just...
you recognize this from the night of June 7th?
That is correct.
What is
and
it?
Those headlights facing us, are those the headlights from the Suburban?
That would be a vehicle that was south of the location, so the police car would have been north.
Right, but is that Mr. Murdaugh's vehicle, or do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Is that a Suburban? I don't know their headlights.
When you got there,
The lights have gone down in not
somebody
Georgia,
that they needed
South Carolina.
to preserve some tire tracks, correct?
That is correct. Over to the right-hand
overhead
side, there's 3 rows of, I guess where they could park equipment underneath the lean-to.
So tire
And the
tracks.
farthest one over, there was no equipment in it, but there were some tire tracks coming out of it.
And, I mean, how did you come to see those? Did
So
you
the
drive-
shed.
You drove in off of Moselle Road, correct?
I drove in off of Moselle Road. The deputy parked in this little driveway here between the kennel and the lean-to.
Right.
I parked at the end of the lean-to. Where I was at, I activated my scene lights, which are all the way across the front of the light bar.
The scene lights,
They're
high-intensity lights.
high-intensity, bright white lights.
Okay.
So it was very dark, and I could see the tire tracks over to the right.
So as we look at this view,
They're not visible in this picture.
I understand that, but
Okay.
would the area you were be to
To the right,
this side or the other?
other side.
Okay, over to this side.
That
He
is
said
correct.
it's very dark, like
And
twice.
On the other side of this shed, right here?
More to the bottom,
Or to the bottom?
to the
Okay.
right.
So let me, maybe we have a video of this, it'll be a little easier for you to look at.
For those of you asking, this is a very rural location, and it is a 1,700-acre property. So not only did it take law enforcement 20 minutes to get out there, but it is very rural. It is a hunting property, and it is a very large property with not a ton of buildings. But it did have an airstrip, we learned, so that was interesting. So he mentioned it being very dark multiple times.
Look at, stop it 1 second.
No, I don't
Back
want
the
to.
other way.
I'm still talking.
Back
Don't
the
tell me
other
to
way.
stop. I'm teasing. I don't know who he's talking to with stop it, but it's interesting that they're not queued up with this. It's just interesting. They knew this witness was going to testify. They knew
From
what they
this
were going to ask him
perspective,
about.
Can you see that perspective right there?
Yes, sir.
Hold on,
If you back up just a little bit,
back it up.
right, if you'll stop it
Stop.
there,
Go back.
you can see the workshop on the left.
How about do this? How about step down here, please? So we all are singing from the same sheet of music. If you'd stand
So we're all
over that way,
singing
so these
from the
viewers
same
can see.
sheet of music
There's a
is a
workshop
wonderful
right
turn of
here.
phrase.
Uh-huh.
And there's a row here, a row here.
They don't
a
have
row
the
here.
technology
Each
to
row is
draw on
where
it.
the tire tracks were.
So he's just demonstrating on
And
the overhead so
crime
the jury
scene
can
is
see.
where?
Because he doesn't have the document up at the witness stand the way we saw in Depp Heard.
Maggie's body is and that's Paul's body.
Okay. And how far is it from where you saw those tire tracks to where their bodies were, approximately?
20, 30 feet.
20 or 30 feet. And you saw, now this was gravel, grass, dirt,
Kind of sandy.
sandy, but distinct
I gotta
tire
say, so
tracks.
we're all singing from the same sheet of
One
music I
pair of
love.
tire tracks.
One pair.
Really do.
Okay. And you couldn't tell which direction they were going in, or you
Could
did not?
have been coming in, could have been going out.
They might have one, we just haven't seen it.
tire expert, are you?
No, sir.
Okay, go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you.
So, whose attention did you bring that to?
Brought it to the attention of one of the deputies. I don't recall which one
Was it Green, Deputy Green?
He said he didn't
One of
know.
the Colleton County deputies.
Yes, sir.
And you indicated to him that it needed to be preserved, needed to be roped off, needed what?
I showed them to him and told him, I said, hey, there's some tire tracks over there. We tried to block off the driveway. I had one of our units stay out on Moselle Road, but a lot of vehicles kept driving around them. There was civilian vehicles kept coming in, and then it began raining. So at that point,
So after you told, he didn't put any yellow tape up to block it?
no, sir. They had yellow tape in front of our vehicles where we were parked, but they didn't put any yellow tape down there.
And vehicles drove around your vehicle and just drove up and down that road?
Yes, sir.
Destroying the tire track?
But the ones that were on
Objection.
the road part, not the ones under the shed.
Okay. But to your knowledge, while you were there, did anybody take any pictures of those tire tracks?
I have no idea, no, sir.
Okay. Did you see any other pieces of forensic evidence, if you will, while you were there, other than tire tracks?
There were shell casings around Miss Maggie's body.
Okay. Now,
It's very sweet the way he is referring to her as Miss Maggie, I
did you
think.
go over and examine Paul's body?
Yes, sir.
Just,
Did you
it's
go
very
in the
human.
feed room?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sometimes
were you very careful
professional witness
around
testimony
the
can
body?
be
Yes, sir.
older.
And the Sheriff's Department started putting up the
This
yellow
is much
tape, and as they
more
did that we backed up and
human.
got behind it.
Much more human. Bethany, I don't doubt that everyone called her Miss Maggie.
Take your course indulgence.
And he's going to go ask if he needs to ask any more questions. But what we did hear from this witness is that those tire tracks that were asked about of the other two officers came from under the shed, like where the equipment was parked, came from under the shed and then onto the road, as if a car was driven out from under the shed. And that the stuff under the shed was protected from rain and from EMS vehicles. So now we know there's not just tire tracks coming onto the road, but there's also tire tracks preserved under the shed. So this is going to kind of ruin that argument that, well, these tire tracks weren't preserved and that's the shooter's vehicle. Well, did the shooter park their vehicle under the family's shed? Because if that's the argument, if those are the shooter's tire tracks, they're under the shed. There was also a great comment that came in the chat from Cat Co. If he was worried, Alec Murdaugh, if he was worried about a possible active shooter, wouldn't he not want his family rushing over? This is a very, very good point.
Is this the area you were talking about where there were tire
And I'm going to
tracks?
talk about it a bit more.
They're over to the left.
I'm sorry?
They're over to the left.
Okay.
Yes, the
Are
911 calls were
vehicles
clearly
that are parked
recorded
up
on
there?
a
That's the
potato.
driveway coming in.
Okay. And then you're saying after that is where these tire tracks were?
Yes, sir, over to the left of this police car. You can see my vehicle was the red and white Tahoe.
Right.
Maybe 15 feet to the left of that was where the tire tracks were.
And you pointed those out to the Colleton County Sheriff's deputy, said
Yes,
they
sir.
needed to be
Yes.
preserved.
I just showed them to them. I didn't tell them what to do with them.
Thank you.
I didn't
No
tell him what to
further
do with them
questions.
because
You
I'm the
got it.
fire chief, sir.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
No further questions. So I want to get back to this point that was brought up in the chat. That was a
Call
very
the next witness.
a good observation from Catco. Alec Murdaugh tells 911. So they're calling Jason Chapman. He tells 911 he's going down to his house to get a gun because he's not sure. And 911 is like, sir, I understand you're upset, but please don't go get a gun when the police show up. Like, being armed when the police show up can cause all kinds of issues. Please don't. Please put the gun in your car. Please don't have the gun. Please don't be holding a gun when officers show up, sir. We don't need any of that. They also don't want him to. 911's going to also be worried about him doing something to himself. But yes, if he's worried enough on 911 to say, I need a gun to protect myself, why are we then calling all of the family and having them come to the property? This is a very, very good point. And Kat, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for
Good afternoon.
sharing.
My name is Jason Walker Chapman. Last name C-H-A-P-M-A-N.
Texas Ranger. Just kidding. Colton Ranger. Damn it, I talked. Jason something Chapman, I think.
Mr. Chapman. Jason, you stated into the record, thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up, and what education did you obtain?
Sure, I'm a native, born in Walterboro. I've lived here most of my life. Graduated from what was Walterboro High School at the time. I attended the College of Charleston and the University of South Carolina, Salkehatchie. Before starting my career in law enforcement, I actually joined the cadet program before age of 21, then became a reserve deputy, dispatcher, and then a Class 1 officer. And I've now been doing law enforcement. I'm in my 26th year.
26-year career. Would you walk us through how when you first got into law enforcement and kind of the roles you've taken on and the training you've done in that?
Certainly. In '97, I attended a reserve officer class. It was a joint class between the Collins County Sheriff's Office and the Walterboro Police Department. I had to actually wait until I turned 21 to take the final exam. Went down to the academy, took the exam, passed, began working as a reserve. I then got hired as a dispatcher at the Walterboro Police Department, where I worked a short stint as a dispatcher to fill in a hole. And in the spring of '98, I attended the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy.
So we're getting background training experience.
I actually graduated as a distinguished graduate from the academy. Since then, I've been doing law enforcement.
I'm beginning to believe that the beards are a mandatory part of the uniform.
And I transferred over to the Sheriff's Office January 1 of 2013.
It makes me want to remind you all of Manscaped's new beard clipper.
Because
it's great.
Then. My training I've worked through pretty much every division there is in law enforcement.
I'm a fan of beards, so I'm here for it.
Process. I have an extensive background in firearms. I'm a firearms instructor, less than lethal instructor, active shooter instructor.
I have string cheese.
I've had training as a narcotics supervisor. I've been through schools for administration.
All the things.
Pretty much everything.
Because you work for a small department.
Literally
everything.
As captain.
I do a little bit of everything.
How would you describe your responsibilities presently?
So currently I oversee special operations. That includes our investigative division, our tactical team, search and rescue.
Oh, this sounds so much better.
Have you ever had an opportunity to testify as an expert in a trial?
I have.
Oh.
Tell us about that.
This past year in 2022, I testified in federal court in Charleston, South Carolina.
So he's going to be qualified as an expert.
The city of Beaufort, and I was sworn in as a expert witness in general police procedures.
I wonder if he's going to talk about the crime
I'm going to direct
scene.
your attention back to the date of June 7, 2021. Are you familiar with that day?
Yes, sir.
So are we qualifying him as an expert or not?
What was your role with the sheriff's office back on that date?
You didn't
The
ask
same as it is currently.
You didn't ask to
Supervising
qualify him.
investigations?
That's correct.
Now would include,
Counsel.
Would that include
Are we an expert?
homicides?
Yes, sir.
You didn't ask. You got to ask the
All
court
right.
to qualify
Did you have
him.
an opportunity? Were you dispatched or were you noticed of an incident that occurred on that day?
I was.
You're switching.
I actually heard the call and went in service before I was dispatched, but yes, sir.
He heard the call and was like, we're going.
Radio?
It's on.
Call coming out that a transfer from Hampton County had been received, in which the caller was reporting that his wife and child had been shot.
Did you know a location at that point?
I was given the location by dispatch, but I was not familiar at the time of the dispatch as to the parties involved.
And at that point, did you decide that you were going to go to the scene?
I did, sir.
What was the dispatch location?
I believe it was, I think it's 4142 Moselle Road in Arlington.
It's a good house number.
Were you made aware of who this involved?
4142.
I was not at the time.
Is 4147 Moselle Road within the limits of Colleton County?
It is, sir.
Don't talk over each other.
And walk us through what you did that night upon, learning
He did.
of this incident.
He forgot he was
and
qualifying
then,
his other witness,
making your
and he
way out
didn't
there.
ask.
Walk us through that process, if you would.
Yes, sir. I had a brief conversation with Sheriff Hill by telephone while en route. He had been advised of the caller's identity as Mr. Alex Murdaugh. With my career, familiar with the Murdaugh family and Mr. Murdaugh. And Sheriff Hill advised me that if it was in fact confirmed to be Mr. Murdaugh, that he would likely notify SLED simply because of the conflict of interest with the family. And shortly
Tell us
before we
more about that.
arrived, I believe he was able to confirm that. And that call was made to request for assistance from SLED and to request that they actually assume primary in the investigation.
Does your department, the sheriff's office,
That's good
do you all
procedure.
work fairly closely with SLED? Is that a common thing?
We do, sir.
All right, describe that process. I mean, not including this particular investigation, but in general, how have you all worked with
I bet
SLED as a law enforcement agency?
Murdaugh was surprised that
As far as crime
called
scenes,
SLED.
like response to crime scenes, my division works.
Oh, I just
with the
texted.
entire
I had
agency,
forgotten.
but we
Sorry,
work
y'all.
very well with SLED.
Sorry, text
The remote location, although we have a satellite office for SLED here.
Touch up
in
more, yes.
Colleton
Conflict.
County,
Do
actually,
tell more.
For the low country. Their crime scene unit still comes out of Columbia. So middle of the night when they're notified that we may need assistance, or in this case that we wanted to take
I think
them
it's the
to take
family's
primary
connections.
in the investigation, even with the fact that they're emergency services, it's still going to be about an average of a 2-hour response for that crime scene unit once they're notified.
Counsel.
So it's very common for us
conflict.
to begin the investigative process at that scene while we're waiting for their arrival, with them working jointly with us.
Conflict.
And that investigative process usually begins with the acquisition of a search warrant, which we know will be required once the crime scene team arrives on scene. And that just comes from a long supported tradition of us working well together and obviously being capable to do so.
Multi-jurisdictional
As a captain,
cooperation
and as a
isn't
supervisor
surprising.
of the investigations,
Counsel.
do you typically wear a body-worn camera?
conflict.
I do have one. At that particular night, I did not have it. It's on my
Other uniform.
my exterior ballistic vest, and the scene was secure prior to my arrival,
So I didn't have my
so I
vest
did not
on.
have my vest on.
Upon arrival at the scene, were you made aware, did you become aware of who in your department had already arrived?
I was listening to the radio so that I knew that several patrol units had arrived prior to myself. And I believe myself, the sheriff, and one other detective
know.
arrived probably about 10,
They were
10,
anticipating
12,
a lot of people
13
being
minutes
there,
after the initial officers.
but I don't know.
Remember the rough approximate time that you arrived on scene?
I want to say it was around 10:35, 10:37 p.m. that evening.
Walk us through what you observed upon arrival.
Go back to the conflict.
So while en route, I reminded the shift supervisor, Sergeant Daniel Green, that to try to maintain the integrity of the scene as best as possible. I wasn't there, so I didn't know the magnitude of the scene. I don't know
Until
what
you get
he
there.
has, but just reminding him, limit personnel inside the scene, do what we can to preserve. Sheriff Hill came across the radio. I was trying to
Secure,
pull the weather
preserve.
up. In this particular area I was driving through, I did not have much phone signal, so he did, and realized that we had an approaching storm that was about 45 minutes
Smart.
out. So he advised over the radio, once he got his phone to pick it up, that we needed to secure a tent. I had not been there yet. He was requesting the tent to place over the deceased bodies of the two victims. I relayed that information
I'm
to
glad they
one of my
checked.
lieutenants that was en route. I also turned one of my detectives around that has the longest drive in, which is Detective Rutland, and
Things I would
informed
forget
her
in
to head
California.
to the office to start working on a search warrant.
In California, I'd be like, we
Common
don't.
practice?
In South Carolina,
sir.
they're like, we need to check the weather.
Kind of
It might
you
rain.
spoke before about
more.
you all conducted joint investigations with SLED. Is it common for, well, describe for us what your roles might be in a joint investigation and what SLED's role might be and how that, played out in this case.
I don't find
Certainly.
it
So
strange.
the very first thing,
because the
obviously,
crime
is a
scene had been
notification
secured.
for request for assistance,
So I'm not
and then the
surprised.
explanation of what exactly we're requesting. A lot of times, our assistance is what's requested is nothing more than assistance with the crime scene. Sometimes it may be that we're asking for them to take the entire case. In this case, the notification was made by the sheriff. All I was told was that SLED was responding, that they were sending a team of investigators as well as crime scene. Knowing that crime scene was en route, we went ahead and secured that search warrant. That's why Detective Rutland was turned around and sent directly to the office to go ahead and initiate that process.
Well, this is a lot more
Obviously,
information.
10:30 at
I
night,
appreciate
we
this.
knew that we were going to have to get the warrant typed, and then we were going to have to locate a judge in the middle of the evening. We wanted to have all of that done prior to the arrival of the crime scene unit.
Smart.
And you touched on
But then why
earlier
didn't you
a little
search
bit
the
about
house?
weather, but describe the weather as it was when you arrived that evening.
Questions?
As I arrived, hot, sticky, I recorded in my notes. The only reason I can go back and tell you exactly.
That
but,
matters.
what I have recorded in my notes is 79 degrees, 89% humidity, hot, sticky. It was not raining yet. An occasional
The air was just
raindrop on the windshield,
sweating.
but no actual rain yet. It was a little foggy on my ride in, but not foggy at the scene. And obviously evening hours.
And I think you mentioned before, but rain did set in at however, how long was it until the rain set
It
in?
wasn't very long. I think the radar was pretty
I wanna
accurate. I want
know.
to say within 45 minutes to an hour of that notification, the rain
Have
did
you
come.
ever seen?
And you mentioned setting
The
up
rain.
tents or requesting that tents be set up. What would be the purpose of those tents?
So in response to the crime scene, obviously
This explains the
preservation
timing.
of
Why they're
any type
preserving
of
the scene.
evidence is
Why
important.
while they're waiting
But
for
the
the crime
preservation
scene
is not always
team,
limited to
they're
to
still
leaving it there and taking a
active.
picture of it and wait for somebody else to
The
get there.
storm makes sense.
In this case, Mother Nature wasn't complying. We knew that the rain was inbound. So the tent was placed over victim Maggie's body in an attempt to preserve any evidence that may be there. I only had one at the time. Paul's body was positioned somewhat over an extending ledge that I was hopeful would keep some of the rain if it did start off of him. The other evidence would have been anything from, and at the time I didn't know what we were going to be facing, but from, you know,
'Cause he
tire
wasn't there
tread,
yet.
footprints, shell casings, anything at all. So the intent would be to preserve that as best as possible. And if it was
That makes sense.
going to be affected by the approaching weather, do the best thing we could to mark it out, measure it out, and have that done or partially done by the time crime scene arrived.
That all makes
As
sense.
far as safety purposes, when you arrived on the scene, would you have considered the scene to be secured at that point?
He already said that, counsel.
I arrived pretty quick. I know that as far as the immediate, you know, right there, the area that I'm sure that you ladies and gentlemen have seen with the tape and the videos that were played earlier, the immediate scene, yes, the outside, you know, the property's approximately like 1,700 acres, and it's not just that property. It sits in the middle of nowhere. At the time, you know, we did not know what we had. I don't know if we had a active shooter, didn't know if we had a murder-suicide, didn't know if we had people in the woods. We don't have any idea. So inner perimeter secure, I would say yes, sir. Outside, you know, in the woods, across the street, I wasn't sure yet. I didn't know.
Is it fair to say that there was a lot of unknowns at that point when you first arrived?
A lot of unknowns when I first arrived. Very little known other than
2 victims.
at the time what they had gotten as initial information from Mr. Murdaugh and the fact that we had 2 deceased.
The
Tell
weather-
jury, if you will, well, first of all, let me ask you this. As part of your law enforcement training throughout the years, have you had any experience with or training in, you know, life-saving techniques, if needed? If
Why
someone
does
were
this matter?
needed CPR or something like that, are you trained?
We
in
know
that?
Oh, yes, sir.
fire's already
Yes,
on
sir.
scene.
And arrival on the scene, did you physically observe the 2 bodies that were present, both of Maggie and Paul?
I did, sir.
And in your estimation, was it clear to you that they were deceased?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you consider that
Yes.
life-saving techniques would be possible?
I don't know
or
why
would
they need
have
to
any
ask this
result?
after the
I
last
did
witness.
not. Paramedics were there shortly before me. Got great fire rescue. I was assured that if there had been anything that could have been done, it would have been initiated prior to my arrival. But from what I saw, it was well beyond that.
If paramedics are on scene, law
On
enforcement is
arrival
not
at the
doing
scene,
life-saving
were there
techniques.
Anyone else present that were not either sheriff's office
The paramedics would be.
employees or employees of EMS and fire? Was there anyone else present on the scene?
The 2 victims, Mr. Murdaugh and emergency services.
And you mentioned Mr. Murdaugh. Is that Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, sir.
Is he present here today?
Yes, sir. He's seated at the defense table, blue blazer, white shirt, and glasses.
They're wandering. It's distracting.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Mr. Murdaugh that night?
I did, sir.
As part of your responsibilities there, what capacity were you there at the scene? In what capacity?
Again, investigative. I realized that, we had notified SLED to take over, but again, what we were attempting to do and what we did do was identification of any potential evidence. We marked that potential evidence. If time had allowed, it would have been photographed, and then from that point simply protected. Absolutely zero collection of anything was done by any of my staff, with the exception of one GSR kit that was instructed by SLED.
I don't know why they keep establishing that.
Have you familiarized
Truly.
yourself with the body-worn video of both Deputies Green and McDowell?
I did, sir.
And what was your first order of business upon arrival, particularly relating to Paul?
By the time I got there, they had placed a sheet over both of the victims. It's something that, I'm not always, I don't like. I understand that a lot of times it's placed there, so the family doesn't have to see that, but prefer that it does not happen. But in this case, it is already there. And because the scene is still somewhat fluid, we talked about the inner perimeter being secure, but as reported by Mr. Murdaugh, we don't know who the defendants are. We don't know where the shooters are. We see shell casings scattered around the ground that are obviously rifle casings. There's some evidence to support that at least one or more shots into Paul were from a shotgun.
Are you listening?
That means
He's
two
not
weapons.
listening to this answer
So
at all.
are
What
there
are
two people?
What are we
Are
discussing?
there other people that may be injured? So inner perimeter may be considered secure, outer perimeter not so much. So we began really quick with two individuals. to
whoever's
make sure
doing the
that we
remote
had not
camera is
missed
sitting
a
there with the
weapon, or
remote
that
going,
The initial responding officers had not missed one. And
It's a lot of movement.
we could see that Maggie.
I wasn't until he told me.
Apologize.
They're getting ready
We
to
could
play
see
the
that
video.
Maggie, there was nothing laying beside her. We looked closely. Again, we didn't move her. So we went over to Paul, and I had a couple of the deputies there and a detective lift the sheet just so that we could look and make sure there wasn't a weapon underneath him. His hands were tucked, so you couldn't see underneath his body. But as best we could tell from the present state of the body, unless there was a weapon directly underneath him, there was nothing out to left or right.
Captain Chapman, I'm going to direct your focus to the monitor in front of you. I'm going to play what's been marked as state's exhibit.
The chatting is just.
What's that? Oh yeah, we need
The chatting, the strolling is odd. So I've seen the question a couple times where there are cameras here.
Yes, sir.
We talked about this a little earlier. There are no known cameras on the property.
Marked it to the 28-minute mark on that. Just looking at the still image right now, are you familiar with the scene there? And could you describe what's going on?
Yes, sir. So that's myself, Detective Tyndall, Chief McRoy from the Colleton County Fire Rescue. Lieutenant Lonnie Nettles in the background near the perimeter, inner perimeter tape. And victim Paul Murdaugh's body.
Whose
to
body
our
cam are
left,
they using?
there in the open doorway to the feed room.
And what are you preparing to do here?
At this point in time, double checking to see if there is a weapon. Yeah, I told you before we weren't sure whether
he's
we're
the one that
talking about a full murder, a murder-suicide, active shooter scenario. Are there other suspects that may be in the woods? We knew we had the casings that matched to a rifle with some evidence to support it possibly a shotgun. So when asking if any other weapons had been found, everyone stated no. So I had them lift the sheet to make sure there wasn't the barrel of a gun or anything sticking out underneath the body.
That's fair.
A little bit about the scene here and your observations of what you're looking at. The kennels directly to the left. If I could direct your attention to those.
Yes, sir.
Did you notice animals in those kennels?
I believe in the 1, 2, 3, there's a couple kennels closest to the feed room that did have dogs in them. I don't.
A lot of this evidence is under seal because it is graphic
awful,
crime
but the
scene
ones closest
depictions,
to the
so
feed
we will
room, I
not
think
see
there
it.
was a dog in at least
We
one or
don't need
two
to.
of them.
We don't need to see it.
Was the area wet?
The area directly in front of the feed room was like wet. There was also water that tailed out of at least the first 2 kennels.
Donna, they might have
The rest
trail
of the sidewalk
cameras,
was not wet.
but
and
there is
that
no
water,
evidence
I never saw a
of
hose, so I'm not sure
cameras
if it was
near
leaking
the
from
kennels
something, but it was
or the
actually
house.
standing water.
None at all.
And was that water consistent with the weather at the time?
No, sir, it hadn't rained yet. Not enough to leave anything. It was a drizzle here and there.
So that water was not
You
consistent.
observed the body of Paul. Was it physically wet as well?
Does the prosecution think he hosed
He
down
was
the crime
saturated
scene?
with obviously blood tissue. And the
conversation of the water is distracting.
But almost as if like absorbed from the ground up. Not saying that someone had sprayed him with a hose or anything.
Huh. Is water wet is where we're
The
at.
video, if you would, and I'll have a few questions afterwards.
They've asked a lot. They've asked a lot about water.
Hey, you want to close that in? Sir? Was that? You want to close it in?
Yeah.
So the guy, the other guy, whoever Eric is Mr. Colin, there's a guy over here that's wanting to talk to him. But that's what we
Don't even know who Eric is. I know Alex over there.
Alex.
I didn't realize they moved.
Yeah, but I don't know if you want me to tell him.
When they come back, I will. I didn't realize they moved. I'm just waiting for them to come back on. They haven't made a water argument yet. I'm trying to figure out why they keep talking about it. There's a reason they keep talking about it. They've talked about it a lot. So we'll see why they keep talking about it. So we'll see. Maybe he did, because the defense was asking one of the other officers, have you ever seen anyone hose out a dog kennel? They're talking about that water a lot. And they're saying that the water's not consistent with rain. They've said it over and over and over.
She has a great truck later. It's her job that belongs to her. She says she can only see the tail light from the vehicle.
It matters to them.
She is also threatening to use them to stop off.
I can't grab these until they're there.
Chapman, did you direct Deputy McDowell into the feed room area to help with lifting of the sheet?
I did, sir.
And why would you do that?
I want the sheet lifted directly up, not drug across the body. Again, I told you I'm not really a proponent of sheets, but since it was there, I would prefer that it be lifted straight up. I had already walked through to see what, if anything, right there. You can see I'm cautiously stepping there, but I'd already checked to see if we were going to be able to step to the inside of it, the spot right inside of the door frame. I had looked, and I felt like he would be able to step straight in, pick the sheet up, put the sheet back down, and step back out.
And is preservation of a scene important?
It is important.
In your line of work?
Absolutely.
Is equally important securing the scene and making sure that you understand if there's any loose firearms around or that there's any other
It is, again.
uncontrolled circumstances going on?
It is, again, the sole purpose of this right here is to help determine whether or not I have any suspects still on the move or if there's a weapon underneath him.
Thank you.
Well, the dad's over there. The people just won't do it.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's why it shouldn't be in the back pocket of the wall. There it is.
Is this you looking for the gun?
It is, sir.
What do you notice about the body physically laid there, Paul's body?
Feet towards the feed room, head towards the driveway, hands tucked underneath the body, fairly saturated in blood. Majority of the head is gone. There's a lot of tissue, what appears to be at least some of the brain or most of the brain lying on the opposite side from me to the victim. Wet, again, I'm assuming probably from soaking up rain or water, whatever that is, off the sidewalk. And a smartphone sitting propped up on the back of him.
Propped up.
Was Paul's person saturated in physical matter and blood?
Yes.
And his hands, were they accessible to anyone without, could you have touched Paul's hands or wrists without physically moving him?
I can't actually see his hands at this point in time.
Fell down on top of him? Is that
They're
what you're
underneath
saying?
his body, yes, sir.
It's interesting that his cell phone's out of his pocket.
What did you observe that was laying on top of Paul's body right there?
Again, it was a smartphone.
Did you have a chance to examine that smartphone and get fairly close to it?
I got close to it. I didn't pick it up. I was present when it was actually collected later, but it was not collected at this point.
And later on, it was describe the collection process that occurred after this.
It was collected by myself and Agent David Owens. I believe he's going to be your case agent. As far as collection of that, I stood by as a witness as he collected. He had on rubber gloves. It was picked up. He didn't actually do any manipulation of the device in front of me. It was bagged as evidence and placed in the vehicle.
Yes.
Was the phone physically bloody?
I don't recall any blood or water on the phone. I'm not saying that microscopically there wasn't, but I don't recall from the naked eye seeing anything.
That's what I'm asking about.
No, sir.
From your observations, was it wet?
Was the phone bloody?
No, sir.
And when it was lifted off of Paul's shorts, did it leave like a mark of blood or water or anything like that?
Not that I recall, no, sir.
Did somebody take the phone out of his pocket, or did it slide out when he was shot and fell? But was the phone bloody is an interesting question. I wonder what else we're going to hear about the phone. Ugh. But yes, the phone could have been in his back pocket and slid when he fell.
I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked the pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he made. He did have a shotgun with him. I have secured that in my vehicle.
These are the officers talking betwixt themselves. I can't hear them at all.
Were you able to locate a firearm underneath the body of Paul?
When the coroner's office arrived and the crime scene unit and victim Paul was eventually moved, there was not a firearm underneath.
Which kind of rules out
Are you familiar with the rifle round called
taking a life,
300 Blackout?
taking your own life.
I am, sir.
Is that in your 26 years of experience, is that a caliber that you come across with any frequency?
In the last couple of years, probably more than ever, but in all the crime scenes that I've worked, I believe this was, at the time, the second ever in my career that had a 300 Blackout as far as being involved in a homicide.
So more of a hunting round?
As supervisor on the scene, is it part of your responsibility and your duties to sort of direct what people do? You're the person in charge?
It is, sir.
Does that free you up to do other things? If you have your deputies doing the tasks that you've assigned them?
If possible, yes, sir, sometimes.
And on this particular instance and this night, were you able to observe Mr. Murdaugh?
It's a
and
type
see what he
of
was up to?
ammunition.
But yes, sir, I spoke to him on a few occasions.
So we'll hear about that a lot. It's the ammunition that shot Maggie Murdaugh. That's the type of ammo she was killed with, and that ammo has
Whenever
been found
you're
around the house.
investigating a case,
The casings have been
I
found
ask
around
you
the
about
property.
items that you might designate as points that you need to address.
Yes, sir.
Describe what that might mean. What's in general like an investigative point or investigative cue that you need to focus on?
Anything that we hear or see that based on the limited amount of knowledge we have at that particular point just creates a unknown, something that may need further investigation, something that maybe doesn't necessarily correspond with the evidence on scene or with the statement made by somebody. It's
Questions.
something
They're
that
questions.
just
It's the
we
I
need
have
to follow up
questions.
on. It can't just be left alone
It's the I have questions of
or
it all.
accepted as fact.
What are your points? They're the I have questions. That's what he means.
What are some of the physical observations? I'm going to ask you about physical observations of Mr. Murdaugh. Did he appear to be, at least outwardly, did he appear to be upset?
Yes, sir, he did.
Were you close enough to observe whether or not he actually cried or had tears in his eyes?
He
Why
was
do you
upset.
care?
Definitely upset. I got
Oh,
up to him
stop it
again,
with the
like I said, I
tears.
spoke to him on at least 2 different occasions.
The prosecution team
And,
needs to get off of it.
He was breathing hard. You know, his facial expressions were that of.
Not everyone cries when they're freaking the fuck
torment.
out. Not everyone cries when they
Did I
don't.
physically see him crying? I did not. He was sweating, but he wasn't crying.
Sometimes I cry when I'm mad, but not when I'm
What did you
sad.
observe about his clothing?
I definitely don't cry when I'm
Clothing
scared,
was clean.
but some people do.
Didn't see anything that stuck out, and obviously no dirt or blood or
The
anything
no
that
tears
indicated
just
he had
seems
been
dumb.
rolling around on the ground or that he had, been involved or anything up to that point.
I'm going to ask you about something
It's
you
just-
do
it's just-
when
it
you're
doesn't
arriving
mean
on a scene,
anything,
particularly if it's a homicide.
whether he was crying
Do
at the
you
scene
have
or
a
not.
practice of
It indicates
phoning or
literally
having,
nothing.
Dispatch sends you the 911 call.
Yes, we do.
Why would you do that?
We get a lot of information from 911 calls.
Yep. I
more
generally
so
cry when I'm
than,
really, really mad.
The average person, I think, would believe. And it's,
Yeah,
over
he
the
was
years,
sweating
we've
'cause
had
it was
several cases where
90% humidity and
had
hot
we
as
not
fuck.
gone back and looked at that initial 911 call, we would have missed some very important information or information that could have cleared up some unknowns, those points of investigation you talked about much sooner. So in our investigative process, that's now one of the things that we try to do relatively quickly. In this case, with the scene being fluid and not knowing if we had suspects on the loose, I opted to go ahead and do that. And it took a minute for them to get caught up, as busy as they were, but they were able to get on the phone with me and play the 911 call for me.
Did I forget to
were
put my
you
phone
able
on
to
Do Not Disturb?
Hear the 911 call.
I was.
And are you listening to that 911 call both for content but also critically and trying to examine the things that are said?
Oh, absolutely. We're listening for noises in the background, exactly what is said versus what we see, so forth.
So with that awareness of everything that was said on the 911 call, do you then take that information and apply it to the scene?
Yes, sir.
And are you applying that information to try to see if it checks out, to see if things are consistent with what you heard on the 911
Sleepy
call?
vapor, I agree with you. I agree with
Not
you.
on the 911 call.
The shifting emotion is
Mr.
more
Murdaugh
telling to me
indicate that
than
he had tried
tears or
to,
no tears.
Examine the bodies or check their pulses.
Yes, I believe dispatch stated, do not touch if you haven't.
Same.
And Mr. Murdaugh replied that he had touched them, checking them,
Yeah, stop pacing, stop worrying
Check
about
to see if
tears.
they're breathing.
and which would be expected, absolutely.
It would be
Upon
expected.
examination, Mr. Murdaugh, did you have a chance to look at his hands?
Again, I did talk to him, yes,
Hannah,
sir.
they played it. It was
you have a chance to
miserable.
look at his shirt?
The audio was
did.
horrible.
And did you see any indication that there was any blood on any part of his body?
No, sir. Not, again, just physically with my observations, no microscope there. I did not see any blood anywhere.
And in your experience with viewing Paul's
Which is
body,
odd.
had you physically touched Paul, would there have been blood left on your hands?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
No. Training and experience.
Is it physically saw the body.
This is
and he
based on
cannot
his training and
testify to
experience. It's
the
not
locations
speculation.
that would be touched and whether it would transfer.
This is based on training and experience. Dick doesn't want this answer in at all
And I'll ask a few more questions.
because it matters. Dick doesn't want this answer in at all
Captain Chapman, going back to your experience.
because it contradicts
in
Alec.
life-saving procedures,
cat.
are there common areas that someone might touch to check the pulse if they were indicating they're check breathing?
Objection, Your Honor. The question is, where did Mr. Murdaugh touch the body for a pulse? Was it the neck?
Objection is overruled. The
Yes, Dick.
prosecutor is asking the question. Go ahead.
Sit down,
Is
Dick.
there common areas that someone might check a body to check for, if they've indicated they're checking for breathing, are
Yes.
there common areas that someone might check?
Especially when the
I
hands
believe
are
the
under
most
the body.
common, the neck and the wrist, that you see that, people with limited training would probably use. I'm sure
Code
there are
Fred,
others
Code
with
Fred.
medical training.
So the neck and the wrist. And please tell me where Paul's wrists were located when you discovered
Dick doesn't
the
like
body.
this line of questioning
They're
at all.
up underneath his body.
And was Paul's neck accessible? If his wrists were underneath
Fred.
his body, was his neck accessible?
Bro. Hi, buddy.
I think you can get the portions of his neck. I don't know that you'd be able to get under, he's face down, and I didn't try to get a pulse, but where I know that
But you
would check
touched
would
the
be
body because you had to move
difficult
to look
without-
for a weapon. So we've got questions.
manipulating the body.
How
in
much
some
blood did you
fashion,
get
I
on
guess.
you with your
If you had
gloves?
to manipulate the body.
Did
and
you
if
put
were gonna
gloves
try to
on
check
so
his
you wouldn't
pulse
get
via
blood?
wrists or neck, with what you saw that night, would your hands be bloody?
No, counsel,
If I had attempted, they would have been, yes.
he touched the body though. One of these officers moved the body. Why didn't you ask the officer that touched the body if he had blood on him?
I'm going to ask you another investigative point that you observed. Did Mr. Murdaugh in the 911 call indicate he was going to retrieve a firearm?
Yes, sir. That actually came out while I was en route as a caution from the dispatcher, but it was also present on the call when I monitored the call.
Having listened to the phone call, having listened to the 911 tape, what was
That
your
objection
reaction?
by
What
Dick was a
your,
mistake.
What was the cue that you were fixated on as it relates to the retrieval of the firearm? What is going through your head at that point?
I'm
Was
just
that he's
taking a note.
scared. I mean, that he believes there may be somebody there that possibly whoever he believes hurt them may come back and hurt him.
Fred.
And sure, that's your estimation, right? That's what you're
together.
thinking was
So
going
that's what I was
on.
thinking, yeah, and that's what I believe pretty much anybody would think if he was there present with them and got spooked. And, because I believe the verbiage on the 911 is, he states, I'm going to get a gun that I don't feel safe. And dispatch tries to tell him, we would rather you not. And he states again that I'm not going to show it to the officers, I'm not going to hurt anybody, I'll put it away, but I feel unsafe. So I understand that.
All right, listen to the 911 call critically. What then did you observe towards
Yep.
the end after retrieving a firearm that you
Dick
would
made
cue
everybody
onto
sit up and think
in your
about it.
investigative process?
Yeah, Dick made
After
the whole jury go, oh, this is
Knowing
important.
that he had
You
went and
don't
got the
want
gun,
this.
knowing that he stated he was unsafe, and that he went and got the firearm there, when he came back, as soon as he got back to the scene, the only thing I believe that was odd from that point was
This has gotten to be kind of
that
monotonous
he wanted to
questioning.
separate the call or cancel the call to
The
call family
objection
prior
was
to
a change of
anyone's
pace.
arrival. It was the only thing that just struck me as odd. Again, it's just a point of investigation. Up to that point in the phone call, he had asked repeatedly, where are they? Are y'all coming? Are y'all coming? Are y'all coming? I'm not safe. I'm going to go get a gun. And then when he got back to the scene, are y'all here yet? How far out are they? And then it was, I need to call my family, and the phone disconnected.
And he hung up. So Dick
when we
broke
refer
up
to
the
the scene-
pacing, and the jury all goes, whoop.
The scene is obviously, does that uncover part of what was, fenced off with crime scene tape? Does that, when we're referring to a scene?
That would have been the primary scene, yes, sir.
We
But
gotta
in your
change these
mind,
lights.
what does
It's
the
annoying
scene
me.
also entail? What other things?
Well, I mean, the only thing that, the phone could potentially extend that scene, the phone call, could potentially extend that scene as far as entering a crime scene and not being able to introduce evidence, or exiting a crime scene without being able to take away evidence. And by his own admission, he left the scene, went to his house and got a gun.
And doesn't stay
Potentially,
there.
that could make the house an extension of the crime scene.
But he doesn't stay at the house.
That's what he indicated on the phone call.
If you
That's
don't
what he
feel
indicated.
safe, lock the doors.
Is Mr. Murdaugh considered part of that scene? The scene?
Of course. He's inside that area when we arrive, and, I mean, he would be factored into everything.
And then would that justify or explain why you might pay particular attention to him?
Sure. I mean, we would anybody that was there.
Now and I'm asking you this again, I know you've answered, but you've had a chance to review the body-worn camera from both Deputy Green and McDowell, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did after those videos cease recording because the crime scene had been secured, did you have an opportunity then to continue your investigation? And
My cat
continue your
also
line of
doesn't
work?
wonder this much.
We did.
And these activities would not have been captured on the video?
Oh,
because of
Steve,
the
we
judge.
will.
Is that
We'll
correct?
know what Alec Murdaugh did on his phone after the 911 call. Just not yet.
Did you have an opportunity to physically observe, meaning watch Mr. Murdaugh while your deputies and your officers were performing their tasks?
I did.
What were a couple of the things that you noticed that stuck out to you when physically observing Mr. Murdaugh and how he was either behaving or what he was doing?
This is interesting.
Again, I mean, he was emotional. Distress on his face. I didn't see him cry. Not everyone cries. I don't have an
Yes.
issue with that.
I don't either.
There were times that when we got to certain places or asked certain questions that you could see a slight demeanor change or body language shift. And, I took note of that, but again, just as a point of investigation. But
And I
he
have
remained at the
questions.
scene. He wasn't forced to say. He was cooperative, but he did, there were times that you could see reaction to different things.
Okay. Did you notice a reaction? Did you ever notice him tracking your movements or your officers' movements?
He was trying to tell people what to do.
I know when I was there when I ordered Detective Barnadoe to take a GSR kit and explain how the kit worked and why we were taking it, and he was very cooperative with giving the kit, and we really didn't have an issue there. Later, was looking at some, I wouldn't call them tire tracks, I'd call them tire impressions because there's no dirt there, it's just grass, but we noticed there was quite a bit of tire impressions that ran around the back side of the hangar.
And we'll get to the tire tracks in a second. You mentioned a term just a second ago called GSR.
Yes, sir.
If you wouldn't mind,
Back up
could
and
you explain to us just what
I
that is?
apologize for that. So a gunshot residue kit is just a kit. We use specific kits provided by SLED because the kits are then sent off for testing, but it's meant to test for the presence of gunshot residue. They're very non-invasive. They have little ampules. You open up a sterile kit, put a set of gloves on, open the kit up, and you'll dab one of the sterile collectors around.
They're
on the
talking
front
about
and back
GSR.
of
Yes.
the hand of an
The order of
individual.
witnesses is very important.
Package those up.
It helps tell the
tape
story to the
off,
jury.
Seal it.
It lays
date
foundation.
time it,
Talk about
case
that more at the
number,
break,
and
but
then
yes,
that's
it
eventually
matters.
sent off to SLED. We were asked. I
They're trying to
spoke
go pretty
earlier and said
linear.
The only thing that my detectives
They're going
physically collected
through the night.
prior to SLED's crime scene's arrival was that GSR kit. It was done by us because there is a time limit on those. And you can't always wait. I know everybody sometimes thinks well, why don't we just wait and do all this tomorrow? But GSR has a 6-hour limit on it. So we had to collect that night, and we did so. And that's what I was referring to when I say GSR, is a gunshot residue test kit.
And Captain Chapman, related to the GSR retrieval, I know you mentioned that time limit, the expiring time limit. Is it your understanding that time, or does that time limit refer to humans or just things in general, objects in general?
That refers to when we collect a GSR sample from an individual. That is our restriction from the SLED lab, is that it has to be collected within 6 hours of the estimated time of firing the weapon. And
Does
again,
the
that kit,
weather-
it's just as much for
Does the weather
any
impact
type
it?
of exculpatory as it is conviction. We use it a lot of times to exonerate someone as much as we would to convict.
Going back to Mr. Murdaugh's observations that you had, did he appear to fixate on one body or the other that were there?
Especially watching the camera footage, I didn't notice quite as much in person, but later scrutinizing the body cam footage, he does appear to fixate more on his son than his wife, but that's in that limited amount of body cam footage that I have.
All right, you mentioned before the tire tracks that you observed.
Yes, sir, or tire impressions.
Tire impressions.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Let's set the scene. Set the scene for us, if you would, please. Describing the grass, and we've heard a lot about, there's rain, but moisture. Describe the scene, if you would, on that grass.
So if you come into the property and you go down the dirt road with Paul on your left, as you see in the picture before y'all, that gravel or dirt road between the kennels and what's referred to as the airport or the airplane hangar eventually ends in grass, a large grass area that separates that hangar from another shed. And in that area is where Mr. Murdaugh's Suburban was parked with the flashers and the headlights were pointed towards Paul's body. But that entire area there is grass as opposed to the dirt or gravel lane between the two structures. And there's some very obvious at that time impressions in the grass, but they're not tracks like you think of that we could cast a track out of dirt.
He's
but you
explained it
can't
very well. It's
cast an impression that's in laid over wet
Dented
grass from the dew. I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything with that other than to document it. And
it existed.
I did notice them, and I actually asked Mr. Murdaugh if he could tell me, because I was unaware of the body cam footage at the time. Could you tell me what direction you came from? And he told me that he pointed and said he had come from the residence and pulled up here, turned around and went back the same route, confirming that the tracks around his vehicle, the Suburban, were his. And he said there should be two sets from where I arrived the first time, left and got the gun and came back. And I asked about the other sets that you could see. And there was one in particular that appeared to come close to Maggie's body, possibly. You had to have the light just right. And it just happened to be that I noticed it looking at the ground in front of Mr. Murdaugh's vehicle because the lights were shining on Paul that you could see that.
To the tire tracks,
more tire tracks.
Did you and Detective Rutland spend some time trying to, or attempting to identify where those tracks could have come from?
We did try to follow them. One thing that started to bother me was that we didn't have a vehicle. We're trying to figure out how Maggie and Paul got to the kennels.
The
it's
ATV
a pretty
was used earlier in the
substantial
day.
Distance from the residence to the kennels, the property. And I don't know an exact, but I'm guessing probably 1,000 yards from the kennels to the house.
Okay.
And it's 10 o'clock at night, so I don't know what time they got there, but it's a pretty long walk, especially if you're planning on walking back in the dark. And did they drive a vehicle? Did they drive
That's a good question.
a four-wheeler or a UTV or whatever, a golf cart? But we see Mr. Murdaugh's vehicle, and because he left it as instructed.
How did they
where
get
it
up to the
was.
kennels?
But we were trying to determine if any of these other tracks lined up with the position of any other vehicles that were on the property. There was a UTV with a flat tire. There was another a half-ton pickup in the shed across the
Wouldn't that be
grass
interesting if
portion from the
Alec
hangar.
drove them all up?
I was thinking maybe those tracks would line up, or the impressions that were in the grass would line up with that vehicle.
Did they appear to line up with
They
either
did
of those
not.
vehicles?
They did not.
As part of your investigation, flash forward in just a little bit, did you
That's a very good
operate
question.
and record 2 drone videos of the property?
I did.
Shan, yes, sometimes
I'm gonna
witnesses
show
testify
you.
for days. So yes, this is a lot of information, but this is one of the main officers with SLED, and these are his investigative impressions. These
This
are
exhibit
very good
187 and
questions.
188. Briefly take a look at those 2 videos.
I haven't seen any mention, but the jury would know because the jury would have seen.
Yes, sir. Both of these discs I have marked as having previously viewed and confirmed their authenticity, one on the 25th of this month and one on the 26th of this month.
And these would be the drone video recordings?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Your Honor, we would move to admit these into evidence, I believe, without objection.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
You're admitted without objection, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a recess at this time. Please do not discuss.
It's 4:00 on the East, and we are going to a break. The court cameras are going to cut, and we will go from there. This witness, as we were finishing up, was looking at how the victims got to the kennel, car, UTV, things like that. It's a very interesting question. Question, can jurors take notes on all of this? Yes, they can. And I'm not surprised that Alec is taking a lot of notes. He is an attorney, or was an attorney. So we'll see. Question, did they do any searches on his vehicle? We don't know that yet. They haven't told us, but we did hear an opening that that there was GSR in Alec's car. So we'll have to figure out how that got there. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what's going on. We heard a lot in those 911 calls, even though the sound was really difficult. I will go back and listen to those, but in the 911 calls, he talked about the boat case again. He was very, very quick to answer when they said, did they harm themselves? Which again, a 911 call operator is going to ask for all of the possibilities. Is it possible that this is what we're dealing with? What are we dealing with? He was like, no, hell no. Which is, look, you never know. And it's hard to say. I don't know. How would you answer that question? If you're like, I don't know what happened. Wouldn't you just say, I don't know what happened? I don't know what happened. I don't think so. So I'm going to go to a feed that does not have interjections at the break for a minute, because that's nice. All right, let's get to some of our super chats and questions. So the chat can recap on the boat case. I did that at the top of this show if you want to go back and watch. Please give us your analysis of the 911 call. I need to listen to it again and try to hear it better. I can tell you what I'll be looking for when I listen to it again, because I need to hear it again. And the jury will have the opportunity to put this on like a laptop in the jury room and listen to it without all that reverb. Hopefully they'll be able to change the volume so they can hear it better. I would want to hear what Alex sounded like in between times, what his tone was like with 911. But again, this investigator brought up a very interesting point. Okay, he said he was afraid. He went down to the house. He didn't stay at the house. He went and got a shotgun and went back up to the scene. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, maybe he wants to make sure nobody comes back or keep an eye on his wife and son who were there on the ground. He could have stayed locked in the car for sure if he wanted to keep an eye. But also, if you are afraid that there is someone on your property that is targeting your family and has killed your wife and son, butchered them, as the defense had said, why not stay on the phone with the police? I see. So you can tell them what's happening if something happens. Like if shit goes down more, wouldn't you want to be on with 911 if more shit happens? It doesn't seem to me that I need to go call my family and have them come to the house. And the chat brought this up earlier because Chad is Bay and knows all. This is why we crowdsource information. Brought up the point. If he's that afraid that he's going to get a gun, and the gun, remember, he's explaining that he's going to get the gun because he's afraid. Why call your family and have them come to the property? That's a question for me. Or are you saying I'm going to grab a gun because there's a very big argument, and as an attorney, he may know this, that touching that weapon might negate the gunshot residue results. It's like, well, it makes sense that he has gunshot residue on his hands. It's a hunting property, and he had picked up another weapon, and he had taken that other weapon up. So it gets onto him because of the other weapon. That doesn't prove that he has recently shot a gun. So I think there's going to be argument about that, but it makes sense. Chelsea said most high-profile murder cases I'm aware of take 3 to 6 months. Estimated 3 weeks for the Murdaugh case sounds quick. Should we expect limited evidence? I haven't seen. There are some cases that take 3 to 6 months that shouldn't. There are a lot of cases that take that long that shouldn't. So it will be interesting to see how it goes. But no, I don't think we've got limited evidence. I think it is what it is. Like once you get into the cell phone evidence, this is a circumstantial case. There's only so much you need to know. What happened at the crime scene? What does the cell phone evidence say? There's not much else. Question, how did the brother find Maggie's phone in the dark? Did he discover it when he first arrived at the scene? I don't know how he found it. We were told that the phone was found through Find My iPhone. I don't know how. And we know that they had an opportunity to talk after police arrived. I tweeted you a picture of the property and distances between buildings. Thank you. I'll go look. We don't have that information in for the jury yet, but there wasn't a conflict in the boating accident. I think there was a conflict in the boating accident. I think maybe the boating accident conflict coming up into court brought up the conflict here, but the attorney said the witness said there was a conflict and the attorney never got back to it. Can you explain? And should have. I want to know more. So you called SLED in because you thought that there was a conflict. The conflict being maybe that it's already been alleged that Alec coordinated with the police department to cover up Paul's involvement in the boat case. That might be important. I don't think the defense is going to bring it up. I sure wish the prosecution did, because they need to know, is that the kind of conflict we're worried about? Is that the kind of power he has? Is that why he thinks that it's going to be fine to do whatever he's doing? It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what comes of the water. If the prosecution's arguing that he hosed off his hands or hosed off his shoes or hosed off the scene, we don't know where they're going with that yet. We haven't seen. Maybe he called his family to confirm they were safe. Maybe he did. Maybe he absolutely did. So we'll see. We'll hear, I think, some of the family testimony about what he called and said. Question, in the past few cases I've watched, there hasn't been recross, but this case has it. Why is that? This is a criminal case, and that goes jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And in criminal cases, it's not so surprising to me to see recross. It's less common in civil, but it depends on the jurisdiction, and it depends on the attorneys. Fred says, Mom, you seem stressed. Let me help. Definitely not stressed. I want to know things. And there's questions I want answered. And I'm like, ask. But it's also me being like, if I was standing there, I'd want to ask this. And the attorneys, the thing is, they know this case very well. So I think sometimes it's hard for attorneys to step back when they have all the information in the case to connect the dots for a jury who presumably knows nothing about the case except what is presented to them. So the attorneys being able to see the map of the crime scene in their house doesn't, or in their heads, doesn't help the jury who hasn't been given a graphic for it yet. It doesn't walk them through it. They haven't walked really through that crime scene easily. And they could have done that with the first officer a little bit. They did talk about a long driveway in the main house and then this and then that. They didn't get into it a ton. So they could have done that to make it easier on the jury. But sometimes when you get too close to a thing, you forget what you know that they don't know. Leslie Ann said, it's been reported that someone took it out. We're talking about Paul's phone, and there was a smudge of blood in the pocket. I've seen that reported. We'll see if that comes in evidence. Alex cries in court, but not on the scene. I don't know if he's crying in court. There's times where his head's down and he's moving. I don't know if he's crying. I just don't know. I would have locked myself in the weapons room. Maybe so. And I think everyone responds differently. I feel like this officer still has some respect for him. I think him being Alec Murdaugh. Let's see. Washing off the raincoat with the hose could be. The question was, is that why he had the gun? The prosecution is going to say Alec didn't grab a gun because he was scared. He wasn't. The prosecution is going to argue he grabbed the gun to negate the gunshot residue evidence. The defense is going to say he thought someone was targeting his family and he is terrified. So, let's see there. I saw another question about the blood. And that's why they asked this officer, so if you had gone to touch this body, would there have been blood on you? Yes, I would have gotten blood on me. So what Alec is telling 911, they're going to say is already not true. Why is he lying to 911? If he's afraid that his wife and son have been murdered, why is he not telling 911 the truth? So that's part of what this is. So there's going to be that back and forth about it. Why is Buster allowed in the courtroom? I thought he was a witness. Nobody's moved to exclude him. So nobody's tried to exclude him. He can't testify about any of this. He doesn't have firsthand knowledge. He is on the witness list, but he was on the phone with his dad. So he doesn't have he doesn't have firsthand knowledge of what's going on at the scene, and that might be why. Brenda said, when you listen to the 911 call, see if you hear an excited utterance from Alex musing to Paul to the effect of, oh, Paul, why did you get into this? Or words to that effect, it was near the end. I will listen. And that could go to him thinking this is related to the boat case, or it could go to him doing this because it was related to everything else. Takes Maggie's phone but leaves Buster's. And it seems like Buster's phone was readily apparent on the body when police arrived. So if there was a perpetrator that saw Maggie's phone and grabbed it to leave, why not take it? And also, if this is a third party unrelated to the family, why take the phones that can be tracked? Leave the phones there. Leave the phones there. I turned in late and realized it is not defense wandering this time. Sorry. No, that was the prosecutor. The prosecutor was the one wandering about. Amber can't cry. I don't know about that, but she sure didn't. Oh, your poor ears. Just you did my headphones. My ears were not pleased with some of this. You saw my face. Question, is it part of the strategy what order the witnesses testify in? Yes. They want, a trial is like a puzzle. And you want to build that puzzle so that the jury can see all the pieces. In my awful puzzle analogy, the opening statement should be showing them the cover of the puzzle box. This is what the picture looks like at the end. And then these are the little pieces. So the jury can start to go, oh, there's a piece here. There's a piece here. This is how the pieces of this puzzle fit together. So yes, telling the story in a logical way where the jury can understand is very important. But the jury just has to sit there and let the evidence come in as it comes in. They often, some jurisdictions are different, but they often don't get to ask questions. Because if I'm a juror, I'm like, excuse me, Your Honor, he said conflict. What conflict? I need to know. I have questions. Questions. So Linda said, why would someone target his family if Paul was finally going to trial in the next few days, weeks for the boat accident? I don't believe the trial for the boat accident was set. The civil case was moving forward in the boat accident. And so I don't know what the defense's theory is on that. In opening, defense makes a comment about witnesses threatened or promised things for their testimony. Thoughts? It was odd, and I don't know what they were referring to. They dropped a couple things into there, and I was like, we'll see. Dick was an amazing defense attorney in his time. I believe Dick isn't that guy anymore. This trial will show Dick is not what he once was. We'll see. It could be strategy. I never want to count people out. I don't want to just be like, oh, buddy, should we not be doing this anymore? I don't know if that's strategy. So we'll see. And that's the thing too, Kate. Alex screwed a lot of people over. Many people would want him dead. I think people were afraid of him because when the murders happened, it was really before the whole fall from grace with the police getting involved. So I think people would still be afraid of this family. Mandy Matney made that comment when it was, hey, who would steal a gun from the Murdaugh's hunting property? Nobody's going there. Did he say he shot him really bad? I would need to go back and listen to the 911. I don't know if he said he shot him really bad or he's shot real bad, referring to Paul. I don't know. And we know that Paul was in fact shot real bad. The jurors are going to have to shower when they get home. It's just like, this is a lot of crime scene photos for a day for these poor jurors. This is horrific crime scene images. And there are things that will never, they will never get out of their brain. So I heard that his wife was investigating finances. We don't have evidence of that. I've heard that as well. I don't know if that will come up. Also, it is a great time to remind you a few things. One, if you're new here, hi, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal commentator. You may see me on television sometimes talking about Real Housewives or Alec Murdaugh or Alec Baldwin, some Alec shooting someone or alleged to have shot someone. If you would like to subscribe, you can tell I'm getting tired at the end of the day when my brain just stops. If you would like to subscribe, go ahead. It is, it is always appreciated. We are rolling towards, what are we rolling towards? 700,000? That'll be exciting. That'll be fun. So thank you for doing the subscribey things. I have a podcast, The Emily Show. I have a shorter podcast, The Quick Bits, that is just the Quick Bits that comes out on Fridays. Might be a little later while we're in trial. It might be late in the day on Friday, depending on when I get to record it. So that is what we are doing. I saw a comment, EDB, When my wife and I saw you on the Impact episode for Jen Shaw, we screamed. Thank you. I got a lot of those when I was on Good Morning Britain as well. It was like, ah, you were on Good Morning Britain. I was. And I've been on Court TV a bit. So with that, go ahead and do the YouTube like, subscribe things. I find that my coverage tends to compete with legacy media, and on the platform, your engagement helps it compete. So it can actually compete with legacy media, which is something I enjoy doing. Look, man, I like it. We build our own little space. We do our own little things. All right. Let us keep going through questions. Ramen says, Rareman, I'm hungry. Clearly. Apologies. My brain is like, ooh, food. If he's crying now in court, maybe he would have had a similar reaction at the scene. I don't know if the juries are going to read that much into it. Maybe they're just saying, don't believe his tears in court. I don't know. I don't like that the prosecution, I have to change this cup and it is screwed on to, me like ready to scream for my husband and be like, why did you put the lid on so tight? I use it with my left hand when I stream. I'm going to have to remind Dr. B not to put the lids on so tight because I can't take them off. That's so annoying. My nails are too long. No, they're not. I love them. I'm annoyed that the prosecution keeps bringing up the tears because it's something that just doesn't mean anything. He was upset at the scene. He sounded upset on the call. Could that have been faked? Yes. Could that have been real? Yes. How people respond to things are different. Could he have been responding to the stress of finding his wife and son shot? Yes. Could he have been responding to the stress of doing the thing? Yes. Do tears play into any of that? Not necessarily. So who cares? Focus on the things that matter most. Don't focus on this ancillary stuff where the jury's like, everybody responds to things differently though. Like, stop it. And it gives the defense room to say, see, the prosecution said he didn't cry, therefore he's a murderer. If you don't cry, you're a murderer. That's stupid. Stop it. It's just a detail that we don't need. What's more important, I think, is the change of demeanor that we see Alec trying to take control of the scene in some of those 911 calls. Like, oh, do you need this? Oh, are you doing that? Oh, there we go. Ha! I'm victorious over my cup. So I don't know. It might be don't trust him. It might be it's all an act. It might be it's all an act, but he couldn't force tears. It's just too much. So, wouldn't someone this into guns know how to wash his hands to remove a bunch of the gunshot residue? And maybe that's what they're going to try to get to when it comes to the hose. They talked a lot about the water. He sounded offended when they asked if it's a mobile home or a house, like he thought they should know because he's so important. I didn't catch that, but I'll take a look. But 911 has their protocols of the things that they ask. If Alec was so worried that he needed to go, why return to the house and the scene? Why return to the scene instead of stay in the house? Exactly, Ohio Palm Mom. I think I brought that comment up once before, so thank you. I feel like you mentioned no tears once. It lodged in the mind of the juror. It's going to matter too, and then leave it there. Keep harping on it. It's trying to make fetch happen. Yeah, it feels, again, the defense's whole thing is this is overreaching. And if they keep trying to overreach about the tears, it gives the defense ground to say, see, they're overreaching about a human reaction where everybody reacts differently. And also, he's a lawyer. Wouldn't he be in control? When he's like into work mode, like, we need to get EMS here. We need to do this. We need to do this. He might have shifted into work mode where he's just like, it's work mode. So, question, what's up with the water? Well, mine's being very stubborn and it made me angry. But no, the water at the house, we don't know. They keep bringing it up. They keep bringing up that there was puddles of water. So, wrap elastic band around lid to get it off easily. That's very smart, Lori. I don't have a plastic band here. So, no more tears. I'm going to start singing No Woman, No Cry in a minute. Was the gunshot within 6 hours of that? If not, wouldn't it have been... wouldn't it not have residue on it? The presumed gunshots were for sure within 6 hours. The timeline the prosecution gave in their opening statement is from 9 p.m. to now 10:20, after 10:26 p.m. What time they did the GSR, we don't know. The judge is back on the bench.
You may bring the jury.
Bring the action. I love the way he says you may bring the jury. I love it so much. This judge is delightful. I want him to try this case. You may bring the jury. So thank you, Your Honor. You may bring the jury. I might not switch to the other feed. I'm going to see how this goes for a little bit and see how the sound goes. Emily, do you think he will testify in his own defense? Too soon for me to tell. I'm going to say that daily until I know. Too soon to guess. My inclination is no because of how many other indictments he's facing. How many days, weeks do we expect this trial to last? The estimate was 3 weeks. I think that includes this week, so 2 more weeks. Question, do jurors get in trouble if they make faces or hide their eyes partially while being shown morbid photos? I don't know if they get in trouble. The attorneys will note it. I think jurors tend to be pretty stoic and take their job seriously, but there's also human reactions. If the judge says something funny, the jurors will laugh. If an attorney says something, the jurors will laugh. You can see jurors kind of react to stuff. They knew what was coming. The defense definitely laid out how gruesome this would be in details, but you can also see people just kind of, you can't force jurors to be like, look at it. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, y'all. I was looking at the judge in his glorious chair all myself. I didn't realize I wasn't sharing it with y'all. Apologies. They are not getting into details. This town is so small. They consider details as common knowledge. Why ask if everybody already knows?
All of the jurors are present.
I want to know.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
I'm shocked at how empty this courtroom is. Were there any cameras? We've answered that a couple times now. You may proceed to stand in front of a microphone and stop wandering
Show you a handful of pictures.
here and there.
I ask you to please identify them.
No objection.
So they're going through cameras?
You offer them all into evidence? I am. They are admitted without objection.
I need to ask.
Yes.
Can the prosecutor call Alex Murdaugh as a witness? No. Under the Fifth Amendment, you cannot. You cannot force him to answer questions. You cannot force him to testify. He cannot be forced to testify. It goes against his constitutional right. He has the right to remain silent
I think we already established that.
and to not incriminate himself.
Placed into evidence, and I would request permission to play that.
I can't
first,
believe.
and then I'll go to the-
I can't believe how empty it is either. It is turned up. So.
Captain Chapman, as we were discussing earlier.
I like the
you
toucan
did
too.
Describe the process of what you did with the drones and why you would surveil the area.
Took pictures with our drone just to give an overall.
Oh, good.
Some of the
Overview.
agents have different job descriptions that day. Some of my personnel had different job descriptions that day. In order to have something as a reference
That's
point
better.
to go back and work with later, we took the department issued drone and took a couple aerial videos so that we could use them for reference.
All right, I'm gonna have to switch, so I'm gonna have to kill this audio. Hold on, and bring up this
What we're
audio.
actually looking at. The video is played. What we're actually looking at.
This audio is hard for me. It has gained way up. Which is their processing.
And
Between the trees would be the main driveway that comes out.
all right, if you could identify that on the video, the driveway that you're referring to.
Show you here, then I'll walk up. Yes, sir. So this would be the main structure and the main driveway that comes out from it with the trees. Ladies and gentlemen, the main structure, or residential structure, and the driveway, the main driveway that comes away from it with the trees.
All right, and now looking down the road a bit, Captain Chapman, this road that veers to the left or
Oh, I don't
turns
think
left,
so.
what is that road?
They probably intended to
So
do
that
this
would have been
anyway.
the route that was described by Mr. Murdaugh.
They probably intended this
Left
anyway.
his residence and came to the dog kennels, coming up the road with the
I
planted
just
trees,
needed
making
it.
a left here, ladies and gentlemen, there. And if you play the video a little farther, that road ends at the incident location with the dog kennels.
And if you would, please describe for us what we're actually looking at with this dog kennel area, identifying the structures and the entry point for the road, the main mailbox area.
Absolutely. So
They're
this
doing
would be the
drone-
area coming from
drone
the main
footage.
residence.
So overhead
When we
drone
arrived on
footage.
scene that night, or at least when I arrived, Right here, positioned with the headlights facing down this way, would have been Mr. Murdaugh's vehicle.
Oh, me neither.
You keep hearing reference of the
There's like-
airplane hangar or the main
There's people
That would have been
everywhere.
The large structure here. The dog kennels are the smaller one you see in the background that run perpendicular, and the driveway goes out to the road. Do I need to show you, ladies and gentlemen, here? Is everyone able to see?
Please do it, just go
Sure.
through what these structures are.
So again, the roadway coming from the main residence. Here you have what's been referred to as the hangar.
I think so too.
Mr. Murdaugh's vehicle was parked in this general area here with the headlight shining down.
We're not
direction.
seeing any.
Dog kennels.
We're not seeing any.
This is the large
the
grass
photos.
area that we were referring to. when
The
we
media
talked
will
about
have
the
access to
tire
them.
Impressions in the dude. And this is a separate structure that sits off to the side.
So,
And where would the entry point for the Moselle Road be on this just still shot?
Following straight down between the hangar and the dog kennels, going all the way through the tree line, the Moselle Road entrance would be back here.
All right, I'm going to just play it one time without stopping.
so they're playing the drone footage. If he's found not guilty, can they retry him for hiring someone to kill them, or is that double jeopardy? For Doherty, it's a
All right,
great
thank
question.
you, Captain
I need to
Chapman.
think on it more.
Going to
Because technically those are
play
different
the
crimes.
second drone video.
But you're being put twice in jeopardy
you
for the same
would.
action. So my gut
Please, please tell us what we're looking at
Is
from
that's
this
a jeopardy
perspective
issue.
right now.
Yes, sir. So this would be the back portion of the airplane hangar.
they looked for a gun and did
The
not find one. I
driveway,
think they
the
changed their thoughts
vehicles
then.
at the bottom of the screen. This driveway goes back around.
I apologize too
And
much.
connects back to Moselle Road.
And is this the hangar that you were referencing?
This is the airplane hangar as we've been referring to it.
What is this structure?
Law enforcement had
on
a
the top
drone.
side of this image in the
I'm
far
sure in
back?
this area that's so big,
I
they
believe
use
that's
it.
a cleaning shed, for a processing shed for animals.
Cleaning
If you're
makes
going to
sense.
process a deer that you killed, it had like a walk-in freezer, sinks, floor with drain in it.
So there was a drain in the cleaning shed. Is there a drain in the kennel? Because if there's a drain in the kennel and you're hosing down the kennels, the water would be in the kennels, not out of the kennels.
All right.
So I have a question. Are there
Describe
drains
to
in the
us what
kennels
we're-
too?
What we're looking at from this perspective, if you would.
Certainly. So if you came in the Moselle entrance, which was the entrance that we were dispatched to, the 4147, and you turned by the mailbox off of Moselle Road and you came in the dirt driveway, you would be coming up between the two structures. You have your airport or airplane hangar on your right with the red tin roof, the dog kennel on your left. That was the vehicle that Mr. Murdaugh was driving when, at least he said he was driving when I arrived on scene. At the time, the flashers were flat. I believe they actually still are in the drone video. The hazard lights are on all the way back from where dispatch initially advised him to cut them on for arrival. The large shed in the background back there is just simply another tractor shed.
And Captain Chapman,
I would think so.
Would you identify where the body of Paul Murdaugh was located when you arrived on
Yes, sir.
this picture?
So the dog kennels on the left of your screen, ladies and gentlemen, if you were to look towards the end of that structure, right where the gravel and the roof
I thought the
line
same
are,
thing.
and then step back approximately 5-6
'Cause
feet,
law
that
nerds
would
are
have
my
been the
people.
location of Paul's body.
And where would where would Maggie's body have been located?
And Maggie's body would have been just beyond the roof line of the red airplane hangar on the side closest
No, I'm
to
just
the
asking the
suburban.
questions that the lawyer brain comes up
The
with.
trajectory of the vehicle that Mr. Murdaugh was operating and actually left parked there, where would his headlights have been directed to?
As it sits now, which I believe is the same it was when I arrived on scene, the headlights were pointed on Paul's body.
And this structure just past the white roof, which is identified as the kennels, what's that run structure there?
I believe that was like a chicken coop or a chicken pen.
Okay. Well, if there's a chicken pen, why wasn't the dead chicken in the chicken pen? Why was the dead chicken in the dog kennel? I thought he was going to keep talking because he had talked so much, so I was trying to send out a text, but no. What do you think about the coagulation of blood that was mentioned? I think it's more consistent with the prosecution's theory than if it wasn't coagulated, and I think we'll get more of a timeline from the coroner, so I'm waiting for that. But it's a problem if the coroner gets there after it starts raining. So we've got a weather circumstance here with all of that. But knowing that before it started to rain that blood was coagulated is more consistent with them being shot further back in time.
The dew of the grass, that you were trying to identify the location of those tracks. As part of your investigation in conjunction with Detective Rutland, did you identify this black truck that we see pictured here?
We did.
Thank you, TM.
Was the black truck, did any of the tracks line up to that black truck?
No, sir, that's what got us back to that location, looking at the tire impressions, was that we were trying to determine if that was the vehicle we believe that Paul may have driven to the kennels.
And did you check the truck to see if it was physically warm to the touch or had been turned on?
It was not.
Did you check or was it not? This is why you don't ask compound questions. Did you check or was it not warm to the touch? So they think that's the vehicle that Paul got up there.
Captain Chapman, the kennel run, I think you already identified, is that the structure with the white roof?
Yes, sir.
The silverish white roof in the background on this image? And the feed room located where Paul actually was sort of straddled, where would that feed room be in this image?
If you look at the right corner of that building, and you can see the white frame door just above the red roof, that would be the area of the feed room.
And with the court's permission, I'd ask the witness to identify that on the screen, if you would.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It's a bummer they don't have the technology where they can draw on the exhibits. So. Ms. Tasha, did he kill his family? We don't know. That's what he's on trial for.
Captain Chapman, would you please identify
He's
in
presumed
this angle
innocent.
where Maggie Murdaugh would have been
The
located?
state is trying to prove. The state is trying to prove that he did. We'll see.
Here.
Is Alec the only person charged with these killings? Yes. He is the only person charged. Wouldn't someone else have to be involved to make this timeline make sense? That is what the defense is arguing. But it is a question. There are two different weapons used, so it just depends. I feel like we haven't gotten anywhere today. I think it's more clear for the jury because they are seeing the evidence.
In the course of your investigation,
and they're seeing the video.
Footprints on the side of the hangar.
Oh, he is not out on bond.
How did that occur? What was your?
He's
what brought
been in
your attention to
custody
that
for over a
first,
year.
And what did you do as a result?
He's not on
Detective Rutland approached me
He's
at
not on
some
bond.
point
He's
in
just
time
in
after her
civilian
arrival
clothes.
with the search warrant that she had located a set of prints. The prints appeared to be a flat style print, like a flip-flop or a sandal of some type.
Oh, Miss Tanisha, I'm sorry.
And they were
my brain has
to
absolutely
the left
stopped.
of this hangar door in the dirt underneath
and
the
then I'm
left
complicating
lean-to
things.
of the hangar.
And if you mean to the left of the door, in the image, do you identify an orange lawnmower there?
That's correct. In between that mower and the wall.
If you would describe what you did and what you and Detective Rutland decided to do to examine these footprints.
She came over and alerted me to the presence of the footprints or shoe impressions. I went over with her. We started at the side of the hangar here that you see in the image by the orange mower. At that particular point, you could only see those sets of tracks or shoe impressions in the dirt. We then
We were talking a lot about
walked around
what's
the
in the
other
dirt.
side, and you could see that they were also on the other side of the hangar, the far side of that structure. So then we made the decision to walk a line off of those tracks from one end to the other to ensure that there was no evidence of firearms, blood, anything underneath that hangar along those shoe impressions, which we did not locate anything but the single set of shoe impressions. And they appear to go from one end of the hangar to the other, turn around and come back.
Alicia, the courtroom looks surprisingly empty.
Entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 193. Are you familiar with that location?
Yes, sir.
Is that a still image of the area between the hangar and that lawnmower?
It is, sir.
And is that the location where you noticed the treads,
Yes.
the footprints?
It is, sir.
Yes, he will still face the other
Handing you what's
charges.
been marked as State's Exhibit 194. Could you please describe what you see in that picture?
Tally, can you fire two different types of bullets from the same gun?
This
No.
is a picture
Two different
of
guns.
the footprints along the edge of the hangar
One of the guns
structure.
could have jammed. Could have. The shotgun was first. If the shotgun jammed and then he
Handing you
went for
what's
the
been
AR,
marked and entered
it's
into
possible.
evidence as State's Exhibit 195. Please describe what you see in that picture.
Again, another photograph depicting the shoe impressions along the edge of the
And
wall.
those are the true impressions that you personally viewed on scene at Moselle.
Yes, sir.
I'm also handing you what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 200. Are you familiar with what that is a picture of?
These are the shoes that were on Miss Maggie at the time. I believe they're
There's the question about
crime
shoes.
scene or autopsy photos from afterwards.
Were two different guns used in the killings? Yes. One rifle, one shotgun. Is he on trial for the possible murder of both? He is on trial. The murders aren't possible. The murders happened. He is on trial for the murders of both. And that's not me, that's me being picky about language, but it's not possible they were murdered. They were murdered. The question is who did that thing? So, Valkyrie outs, were the shoes Vans? Unlikely. So, I am going to get to a few questions while there is a pause. Why would one person use two guns? The prosecution's going to have to answer it. It could be either because it wasn't one person, or it could be because one person wanted it to look like two, or it could be because a weapon jammed. But I think that's a question the jurors are going to want to ask. But how long does it take to put one gun down and pick one gun up? The bigger question to me is, where did they go? Where did those guns go after the killings?
Rear view of the car operator.
Very
by Mr.
possible.
Murdaugh that night. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
They talk about
And
him
is
manufacturing,
are those headlines
manufacturing an
directly aligned
alibi.
with where Paul's body would have been laid?
Yes, sir.
And from this perspective, where was Maggie's body located?
Close to the front of the Green Ranger to the left of the vehicle.
Hello, Maria.
From which direction did Mr. Murdaugh indicate he drove to the scene from? Which direction would that have come from?
This is
Bottom
possible.
right-hand corner of the picture that you're seeing now.
We should hear social media audio about the dead chicken. It's going to come up again. It might have been a ruse. Vicky said he said they're not breathing on the 911 call, but asked the police, are they dead? Asked them multiple times. We've also heard from all the police officers that based on the state, it was kind of obvious. He might have been asking, are they dead because he was in shock? He might have been asking, are they dead because he's trying to make the officers think that he's in shock. It kind of cuts both ways on a lot of these. Is he playing 3D chess with the lawman? Is he playing 3D chess with the officers? Or is he someone who walked upon the most horrific crime scene anyone could walk up upon?
Captain Chapman, I'm just asking you to identify just very quickly. These are
That's the push-pull of this case.
The video feed, what does that show?
As a West Kentuckian, hearing
That's
all these
the,
accents, I'm like, my people.
Dirt
This is
road
my kind of
between the
court.
hangar and the dog kennels.
I'm here for it. I'm here for all of the
State's
southern
Exhibit 192.
accents. I kind of like most accents, though.
This
I like
is State's
dialects.
Exhibit 191. And what does that show?
That's the,
We'll hear
like
that
I
from
said,
the
a cleaning
coroner.
shed, processing shed for animals, had a walk-in freezer
That's the delightful.
floor with a
A
drain in
rooster.
it.
I appreciate
Showing you
the
State's
levity.
Exhibit 190. What is that image of?
Looks like the area, the first two kennels closest to the,
This is also a fair point. Shotguns only typically have two shots, and this shotgun
Does that
shot
reflect
both.
the two kennels?
Two
with
shots
the
came
two
out of this
dogs,
shotgun.
on either side closest to the feed room?
closest to the feed room.
And there was wadding for two shotgun blasts. And it might have been that they expected one blast for one body or one blast for one person. but
And I'm showing you what's marked as States Exhibit
these also aren't
189.
super heavy guns. You could, I mean, this is a family that has a lot of guns, that's familiar with guns, that has ammo in a lot of places.
Is that another close-up of the water?
That's close up of the water just outside the feed room.
Jacqueline, no, there's no, I mean, I'm not taking votes on who thinks what. We're early on in this stage. If you're on the jury at this point, you have to think he's innocent and be looking for the state to prove it.
And I'm referring to the pictures we just
So I don't think you're,
reviewed.
I don't think.
This would be States
I don't
Exhibit
know.
193.
I'm trying not to vote yet. I want to hear more evidence. I've got questions and I try to raise the questions that I have.
Is that where you
I'm trying not
physically
to
walked with
judge
Detective
this yet
Rutland?
because I don't know if they're going to be
It
able
is,
to prove
sir.
it.
And to be clear, when you observed the footsteps in the sand there, were they the only footsteps present?
There was only one style of shoe impression when we first observed that went from one side of the hanger to the other and back.
Oh.
And it was that smooth style shoe impression.
And you say there and back, does that mean the footprints to you indicated they had walked one direction and then walked the opposite direction back? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir. We weren't able to tell
One
at
type of
which point,
shoes.
which side they entered initially, but they walked completely from one side of the hanger all the way underneath the lean-to the other side of the hanger, or turn around and come back.
I'm now showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 194. Describe the types of treads we're seeing in this picture, if you could.
So if you remember, I stated earlier that after locating the shoe impressions, Detective Rutland let me know that the impressions were there. I went over, we checked both sides and realized that they ran what we could tell with a flashlight from one side to the other. So we made the decision to walk straight through, keeping the shoe impressions that we were concerned about in between ourselves and the wall of the hanger structure, never crossing those actual shoe impressions. We went from
the
one
outside.
end to the other just to see if they were joined by any other shoe impressions, if there was any blood, if there were any weapons, so forth. We made one trip down and back, and we did not locate anything.
Where did the shoes go? Who
And
was
I'm now
walking?
showing you what's been marked as States
Where were they
Exhibit
walking?
195. Would that be a close-up of these impressions that you observed?
It is, sir.
And specifically, the items in the middle with the flat tread, would those be the footprints that you noticed that night?
Those were the ones initially identified by Detective Rutland and pointed out to myself. The ones with the shoe impressions with the actual designs that would be left of those in this photograph, those are myself and Detective Rutland.
So he's saying the smooth shoes are one thing, and then the shoe impressions with design are the officer shoes.
I'm going to move to publish what's been marked as and entered into evidence as States Exhibit 196 and 197. These are images of sensitive nature, have the cover sheet. I've advised counsel and our table to obscure the monitors. Showing you what's been marked and entered into evidence as States Exhibit 196. Are you familiar with what this is an image of?
Yes, sir.
Should be shoes.
What
right?
does this show?
That's the lower portion of victim Maggie's body.
Does it
And
show the
specifically
shoes?
referring to the lower portion of her body, but her footwear. Are these the footwear that you observed on her that evening?
Those are they appear to be an accurate reflection of what she was wearing the night I was there.
Were you able to compare the general size and shape of those foot treads to the ones that you personally observed on the side of that hanger?
General impression, they are similar in nature and design and size. There were no measurements physically taken by myself or Detective Rutland.
Thank you.
They seemed consistent. What I think they are trying to show is to account for all the different shoes on the scene.
Publishing what's been marked.
These shoes belong to
and
Maggie.
placed into
Those
evidence
shoes
as
belong
States
to Paul.
Exhibit
These
197.
shoes are unknown or not unknown.
And this is a similar photograph with just a slightly different angle. Is that the same treads and same footwear that you observed previously?
Again, what we believe that what we saw on the side of the building is a very close match as far as design and size as to those.
Yes, there would be. If there were two shooters, there'd be more footprints. The more people on scene, the more footprints. The defense is going to say, you don't know, because the police came tramping through the crime scene.
Evidence of States Exhibit 200.
It destroyed it.
Are you familiar with that? I know you already described it, but tell us again what we're looking at.
Again, those were the shoes that were removed from victim Maggie's body at the scene
And the
and the ones that
jury,
we were visibly comparing.
the
shoe
jury will be able
impressions.
to look at the two and decide for themselves as well if they look similar. This is possibly why the defense was all up and about talking about the officers tramping through the crime scene with their feet, because if the officers have destroyed the scene and there's too many footprints, you don't know if there's second shooter footprints there, or you don't know if there's the perpetrator footprints there. But if you've got a very clean, crisp picture, these footprints belong to Maggie, this is where she was. These footprints belong to Paul, this is where he was. These footprints belong to Alec, this is where he was, and there's no other footprints, then you've got a big problem with somebody else being there.
Be on the lookout or a bolo.
That's probably
placed
why
in
the defense was
in
talking about it so much.
particular, vehicle that night?
Yes, sir. I believe I explained earlier that we had asked if anything was missing from the scene and trying to determine how Maggie and Paul got to the dog kennels. And after checking the F-150 that was in the picture that showed you earlier, the dark colored F-150, and that the Ranger had a flat tire, neither one of those matched up. I actually asked Mr. Murdaugh if he knew how they got down there.
And
he said he wasn't sure, but they should have driven Paul's truck, which was described as a white Ford F-250. We noticed that the truck wasn't there. It wasn't up until that point that Mr. Murdaugh, probably with everything going on, did not realize the truck wasn't there. And at that point in time, to our units at our agency, it was boloed out as possibly having been taken from the scene or removed from the scene.
Interesting.
And what happened? Were you able to locate the car eventually?
That was done sometime that night while we were on scene the very following morning, and I would have to look back at notes to tell you exactly, but I believe it was around 10:30, 10:45 the next morning. That vehicle was located just inside Hampton County off of Highway 63.
What?
Captain Chapman, referring back to the tire tracks, I know you spent some effort trying to identify.
Did somebody ditch a car?
Tire tracks. When you were
Wait, what?
attempting to investigate
Wait, we got
those
questions.
tire tracks with Detective Rutland, did you have a
Where's
chance
the
to then
F-250?
observe
Why is the
Mr. Murdaugh
F-250 in
from
Hampton County off of Highway 63?
Yes, sir. And
How
we
did it get there?
discussed,
Wait.
there were changes at the time.
What kind of changes?
Did somebody take the car
Again,
to stage a scene, or did
he
somebody
did
take
appear
the car to
very
get away?
upset. Heavy breathing,
I have
distraught.
questions. Pause. I've got
When
questions.
we asked the specific questions in regards to the tire impressions and we began looking at the tire impressions, it was just a change. The breathing slowed and he began to watch us work more closely, sometimes out the corner of his eye. And after we moved away from that area with the tire impressions, the demeanor change returned back to upset.
Who moved the F-250? For all of you that F-250, this is a very wealthy family, so the F-250 doesn't surprise me. The F-250 being down the highway when Paul and Maggie are at the house surprises me.
No further questions from the state. Thank you, Captain Chapman.
Oh boy,
Sir,
it is 4:48. He said flat tire on two other cars, a Ford F-150, and there was another vehicle, and they said those vehicles didn't match. So now I need to know about what's going on in the truck. Did they search the truck? Did they check for blood in the truck?
My name's Dick Harpoogian. I don't think we've met before.
No, sir.
He's probably glad. I'm
I
teasing.
represent
I'm being rude. That was rude. Emily, that was rude.
And
Girl, stop.
let me ask you a couple questions. One, and let me deal with these
Very surprised about
in
the
a
truck.
different order.
Certainly.
But you
Shock Pikachu
indicated
face.
that if Mr. Murdaugh had taken the pulse,
Yeah, I want to know all about the F-250.
tried to take the pulse of his dead son,
The defense
on
will
his
ask.
neck, or his wrists were under him, did he indicate to you he had tried to roll his son over?
To me, no, sir. He did not.
Okay, tried to move him at all.
The defense should ask a lot about the truck.
Secondly, if he did get blood on his fingers or hands, were you aware that there was blood found on his shorts?
I was not, sir. Again,
You said there was no blood on his shorts.
Visible observations and just did not see anything at the time.
Right, nothing on his shirt that
No,
would
sir.
indicate. Okay.
And I was unaware that anything was found.
You said
But
there was
you're
no
not
blood on his
saying
short.
that you didn't see anything that would confirm, but he didn't smear
That's
blood on
correct.
himself. Right.
That is correct.
But you're not saying that you have evidence he didn't.
Are you aware there
Try
was
to
blood
check
on the
the pulse
shorts?
was dead,
I don't think there was blood
I
on the
am
shorts.
not.
I think
No,
that is a
sir.
trick question. I think that is a trick question.
So.
I got to make a note.
And I think you indicated that his demeanor was consistent with somebody who had just found his wife and son butchered.
I think that's a trick
His
question.
demeanor upon my arrival and initial conversation with him was one of someone who was upset.
Okay, now let's talk. Just a moment ago, you said something about when you started looking at the tire tracks in the grass.
It was a change of demeanor, yes, sir.
Well, a change of demeanor that perhaps he thought you had some evidence
Perhaps
that
he
would
what?
point
Who
to
what?
the killer of his wife and child.
Are you asking me if that was the change?
Was the demeanor consistent with that?
He's asking
It
you
was
to-
simply a change in demeanor.
Right.
And could it be?
Yes.
Sure, it absolutely.
Anything could be
It was just a
anything.
noted change in demeanor.
His interest
Exactly.
perked up. Right.
Yes, sir.
You were over there looking at tire tracks, and perhaps you had discovered a different car or a different tire track, and did you follow all those tire
Or
tracks?
perhaps he thought
We
that
attempted to
he
follow
had
out everything
driven on the
we
grass so
could.
you wouldn't see it.
As I mentioned earlier, it was just impressions, dew impressions, wet impressions, not actual tracks.
Did you take pictures?
By the time that we did that, the rain started and SLED's crime scene was arrived. Again, we were rushing against the weather. The images, I believe we discussed earlier, were the only ones captured by body cam.
Right.
And
it's the body cam is not.
our focus at the time was to secure
So the rain really
the
became a
largest
problem.
items of evidence that were identifiable to make sure that the weather didn't damage them. And by that time, SLED's team was on scene.
I think
And now there was
I'll get to
two
this in a
other
minute. I'm gonna hold on
sets
to
of
this.
tracks. One of them coming out of the shed, and I believe your notes indicate that was the caretaker or the caretaker.
That's not
Now,
what
was
he
that
said.
the caretaker that took care of the dogs or somebody else?
How would he
There
know?
was a set of tire tracks or impressions that went through the dirt underneath the hangar
Right.
lean-to. Initially, we didn't know whose they were, what vehicle had left those tracks. In the drone footage, you can actually see the agent still processing those. Believed that later, I was told that they matched the tire tracks of someone that came to take care of the dogs.
Okay. Now, we heard from the
Okay.
fire chief a little while ago. Were you here in the courtroom when he
No,
testified?
sir, I was not.
Okay.
He's not
He
supposed to
indicated
be.
that there were,
Objection.
on the road that led out to the Moselle Highway, you know where I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
You know,
He does. He's very skilled. He's very skilled at dropping just little flicks. It's a LaCroix whiff.
wait a minute.
It's a little theories. The killers, perhaps more than one, maybe not. It's subtle, and it's smart. It can also be annoying, but it's subtle and it's smart. These witnesses are holding their ground. He's testifying, speculating. Of course he is. It's cross-examination. That's exactly what he's doing. That is precisely what he is
Give
doing.
me the first one. It may be in there.
He is. He is stirring the muddy water. He's also a politician. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And the reason, okay, so I got to the question and I meant to go back to it when we had a break. Damn it, Dick! I was just about to get to a question.
That the chief of police had found some tire tracks on the road leading in or out to the Moselle Highway behind. And if you look at the screen, this road where the cars are parked on either side of the road, that is that road, correct?
For clarification, the chief of the fire department or chief of the police department?
I'm sorry, chief of the fire.
Chief
Just
of
want to
who?
make sure I was answering correctly, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Chief who?
I was not made aware by Chief McRoy of anything back there, but it doesn't mean that he didn't see something.
He apparently informed your deputies of that. They never communicated that to you?
I was not made aware of any tire impressions of potential evidence down that driveway.
And I think
Excuse me.
Sergeant Green
Yes, sir.
indicated that
I'm
it was
just-
communicated to him by the fire.
It's just.
Were you aware of that?
I was not, sir.
It's just.
Until I just said it, you were not aware of that?
I was not made aware of anything that they believe was a possible extension of the scene that went down that driveway. No, sir, I wasn't.
Oh,
If the
yawn.
Fire chief had seen, and he
Sorry.
testified he saw distinct tire tracks on that road, he thought it had some
If
evidence.
I'm yawning, the jury's yawning.
Had you been made aware of them, would you have taken photographs or?
It
I guess
rained.
They don't use plaster casts anymore.
I get to multitask.
We still do. Yes, sir. I would have done my best to preserve it.
Who is this standing there?
whether that
Why are you
meant
hovering? Who's
photographic
hovering?
form or
Who's hovering?
protection by other means from the
Thank you, by the
approach
way,
from whether I
camera
would have.
operator. We want to know.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Oh, this is their tech person. I appreciate the camera operator was like, wait, we'll go back. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, no, here's the thing. At the end of the day, and we're at the end of the day, the defense has to keep it
Now-
snappy or the jury's also going to be like, oh, this is a long day. This is a
I'm
ton of
Yes, sir.
information to take in. And we're back
These are the
talking about
that's the
tire
dog
tracks.
shed right there, right?
That is correct, sir.
Tire tracks at which
And
went way? Which
right
what
around
way?
in here
Which who
would have
what?
been where Paul's body was.
Close to the end of that structure, yes, sir.
If the camera
And
operator
Maggie's
is
body
watching,
would
thank
have
you. We
been
appreciate you. We
On
stand.
which side of this?
We
of,
appreciate the help.
Paul's car?
Thanks. We love it.
The end of the red roof on the driver's side.
Right, now, are you aware?
No,
and
the witnesses
that
aren't
he
going to get in trouble.
Discovered the bodies, called 911, drove back up to
We're
the
just going
house,
to keep talking it into the
and then
universe.
came back down.
From listening to his statement and from the 911 call, I was aware of it.
And
Yes,
y'all-
sir.
Oh, we're gonna have to
he went
get
and
hard
got a
candy for
shotgun,
this
came
trial.
back,
Yes,
I've
sir.
st-
and the shotgun
I've still
was
got Dep V.
there,
Heard
sort of
jelly beans.
corroborates, his statement, right.
I was made aware of that, yes, sir, that Sergeant Green took the shotgun from him upon his arrival and secured it.
Yeah.
And you can also hear
You
the
think?
seatbelt dinging going on as he drives away, can you not?
You can hear that in the background of the 911 call.
Right. So this is where he came back, not necessarily when he pulled up to begin with, correct?
Huh?
My understanding, that is the way the vehicle was when he returned, and the initial officers arrived on scene.
Right. So you don't know where the car was positioned. We first came down and discovered Maggie's body and Paul's body, correct?
My knowledge to it would be limited to his description of having taken a very similar route back to the house. But
Right.
Exact,
Right.
close but not exact, yes, sir.
Now,
Right.
what is this green
Okay.
edge or whatever?
What's
If I'm
the
not
thing?
mistaken, it was a grapevine, but the structure on the other side of it, a
Oh,
chicken coop.
like an actual
Do you remember how
plant.
tall that grapevine was?
I don't know exactly, but looking at the image, it's fairly tall,
10 feet,
What?
I would say at least.
at least. Now, if you were at the house, looking down this way, there's some pine trees between this area and the house?
There are, sir.
And then there's, if you're trying to look at the
It's so hard to visualize without
the
the
dog
photos.
pens, there's obviously a 10-foot at least,
They did. They heard it all through the
what'd you
grapevine.
call it?
The kennels,
No, the vine.
I'm
grapevines.
going to ask this
Grapevines.
when we have
Yes,
a
sir.
break.
10 feet tall. So you could not see from
I'm
the
going to start
house
singing.
the dog kennel because of the pine trees and the grapevine, correct?
Huh. You
I would
couldn't
venture to say
see.
you could not see the position of Paul or Maggie's body from the house
At night,
at night.
right. And this is not a well-lit area down here, is it?
I don't recall it being extremely well lit, no, sir. There was some artificial light, but I wouldn't call it extremely well lit.
Okay.
Interesting. He's like, there was some light. The other guy was like, it was so dark. Oh, I like this setup better. With Alec down at the bottom there. What does this have to do with
Go ahead and
anything?
Continue running the
The
video.
prosecution had intimated that wouldn't Alec have seen them if he was home and he had heard the shots? Couldn't he have seen them?
Yes, sir.
And they're trying to establish, no, if he was down at the house before he left for his mother's and they had been shot then, because the timing is weird. I don't like this as much. Then wouldn't he have seen from the house? And this is trying to set up, no, he wouldn't have necessarily seen from the house.
Okay, stop.
So
That black truck, whose black truck is that?
the sensitive stuff
That's
is under
the vehicle
seal.
that we checked that evening.
On-site media
that
has
I
access,
believe
but if
is-
they don't provide it to the
Was
public,
titled as a farm truck.
I'm not
just
there to grab it.
Around the farm truck.
So
And is that
We'll
the one
see.
you checked to see if it had been driven lately?
That's the one that Detective Rutland and I looked to see if those wet tire impressions matched up to the position of that vehicle when we arrived. Those particular impressions did not, and the vehicle was not warm to the touch.
Okay, but that would have been the previous night?
The night of the incident, when
Right.
we arrived, yes, sir.
The night prior to this? But that, could Paul have driven
What?
that truck down there?
wait, what?
It would depend on what time he drove the truck down there, but the impressions that we were looking at, that we referenced when asked earlier by the Assistant Attorney General,
Huh?
they did not come to
They
the
did
back
not
of
come
that
from that.
vehicle. They didn't come from that vehicle. Did he drive that vehicle to the scene? I can't tell you that, yes or no, but the impressions that she and I were looking at did not match the position of that vehicle.
Right.
Yes, sir.
But Paul earlier could have driven that down there.
He could, it's very feasible he could have driven anything out there that night, or earlier in that day, but just not that vehicle for those particular set of impressions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. That was okay.
Okay.
What? The officer has done an excellent job staying focused and being very, very, very specific. So that's been helpful.
Back it up a little bit more. Back it up a little bit more. Back it up. Okay, let it run. Now,
The
stop.
drone footage would have had to have been taken sometime later.
So the
But they were
tracks
still
that you found
processing,
from the
so yes, it was
caretaker,
probably
where were
sometime
they?
the next morning.
In the image that you're looking at now, ladies and gentlemen, they would have been to the
No.
right of the open door in the center.
They have not reached
Underneath
capacity.
that
I think people are
large
staying home and
lean-to
watching it with us. Hi,
So the
everybody.
right
Could you
side
come
of the-
down here and point it out?
Whoa, Dick!
Yeah.
What? Why are we interrupting?
Thank you, sir.
Y'all just do the YouTube likey, subscribey things. I think everybody's just staying at home watching it because we all get to chat amongst ourselves instead of sitting in the car trying to not fall asleep.
Where she's still actually processing.
Okay. Were there any other tire tracks? Any other tire tracks? Go ahead and take it.
Thank you, sir.
That y'all processed other than those tire tracks?
To my knowledge, that was the only set that they actually, I believe the only set that they actually processed. By then, the only one left that wasn't damaged by weather as well.
Okay. Go ahead.
Debbie, it's possible. I mean, we're in a criminal trial. We're in the realm of a lot of things are possible.
Keep going.
Yes, and we have coffee and snacks. We definitely get to have snacks.
Stop. So, and this road here goes out to Moselle Highway, right?
If you were to take the right T there
Yep.
by the
talk about
silver
this at the break.
trucks,
Yep.
if you took the right, that would go out to Moselle Road. The left just loops around the airplane hangar.
Okay. And if the fire chief had indicated there were tire impressions
I want ramen.
back here in the dirt, you would have taken pictures or gotten plastic casts or something, right?
If I had been made aware that there was something there that someone thought may possibly be evidence, I would have done my best to secure it, but I was not made aware of any of that.
Definitely chewing eyes.
Yes, sir.
Keep going.
Question, would the evidence be released by the media at the end of each day or end of the trial? They are allowed to review it at the end of each day. They're allowed to photograph it at the end of each day. There's a specific amount of time the media is allowed access to the exhibits that are not sealed every day, and they can choose to photograph and share those things. So at the end of each day, the media has like an hour to do that under supervision by the court clerk, and then those can be released. at the end of each day by those outlets, if they choose to. What gets me is, was it normal for them to walk to the kennel, or was it normal for them to drive there? Why was his vehicle the only one there? That's a big question. The truck is new information. I want to know way more about
White
that.
building there.
Yes, sir, the Murdaugh residence.
Keep going.
I really want more information.
Come down that driveway, take a left at that road, stop. And that if you kept going straight, you hit the Moselle Highway, right?
If you continued straight out the driveway with the planted trees on either side, that would be a separate entrance from the farm entrance.
Right.
It would have been the main entrance to the residence itself, off of Moselle Road.
Glad you're here.
Right, the main entrance to come to the residence.
And we get
That's
Tic
correct.
If
Tacs.
you're going to the residence, you come in that entrance.
That is
If
correct.
you're going down to the dog pens, that
Ooh,
area,
do I have
the
my
farm
Tic Tacs
area,
in my desk?
You take the entrance with the
I would assume so.
post office box on it. Okay.
No, I probably took them with me to film.
And
Sometimes I have Tic Tacs. I'm gonna have to restock my candy drawer after Deputy Hurt. I forgot. So I have Tic Tacs somewhere. They're not. In court, you can't eat a waffle sandwich, sausage and egg sandwich. You cannot.
Thank you. Let me ask you a few more questions.
Well, where was his truck? I don't know if we know he was driving. The jury doesn't know that.
The photos of the
He stops
the
mid-sentence and I lose track.
footwear, I think the flip-flops or whatever. In one of your reports, you describe that as it looked to you like
The
someone
jurors
had been
have
pacing.
a lot of info.
Is that correct?
I did describe it as pacing, I believe,
Is that accurate?
simply because it goes down, turns around, and comes back. It doesn't appear to veer off anywhere in between, and there's nothing. It doesn't start anywhere in particular. Anywhere in particular, it goes all the way across, turns around, and comes all the way back.
Okay, and the pictures that... and I'm
Not with a
gonna-
destination.
Could I have those? The pictures... that-
Pacing like the prosecutor. Do you mean pacing like the prosecutor, or just like one little loop? Because that could be looking for something where you go out to see a noise or something and then go back. I don't know if I'd describe that as pacing. But can jurors request naps? They should be able to. With the lights going off and on, it's trying to keep them awake. They're like lights off, lights on, lights off, lights on, lights off, lights on. It's trying to just keep them awake. Maybe. But it's just the rest of us are like, ugh. Is the truck in the same direction as Maggie's phone? It's a good question. I'm going to make a note so we can come back to it. Sky's a neighborhood. We're going to keep an eye on that as we get further into this trial. I'm going to just make a note.
This is 195. See, are there other pictures in
Because we don't have Maggie's, we don't have where Maggie's phone was, but I can go look at opening because they say it in opening where they believe Maggie's phone is. So that's a good question. I will go back and look at opening to see if I can answer that. But the thing is, if they say down the highway, we're not going to know which way down the highway is.
these flat marks, right?
My local friend says they're all
would be
sick of this case.
flip-flops.
I'm sure it's kind of taken over their community.
The impressions we were following, yes, sir.
Yes. So they're like right here and here and here, and in some instances, these look like, actually, we blew one up and it's got an REI symbol in the middle of them. And they're, in at least one instance,
Is it the boot
the flip-flop.
that Reese Witherspoon hurled off a mountain?
The only prints that I'm aware of that we could see that night without blowing anything up was the image of the flat shoe wear that you see, and then what Detective Rutland and myself were wearing when we crossed through.
The
Were
flat
you
shoe wear
wearing-
plus cop shoes.
I mean, is this y'all? Would you have walked over there or here?
Presumably so, because those images weren't there prior to us walking through. I don't remember exactly what shoe style Detective Rutland was wearing and myself, but
Don't they have a picture?
So, let me put this one up.
They have a picture. They have a picture of the officer's shoes because it was in the other pictures.
Again, you can see the pattern of flip-flops, but you also see these patterned boots or shoes over the flip-flops. Are you telling me those were not there the night before, or you couldn't see them?
no, sir. What I'm telling you is when
compound.
Detective Rutland and I first observed those impressions, it was nothing but a smooth, small, flip-flop style impression. Went down from one end, all across underneath the hanger, all the way to the other, turned around and came back, which is the reason that I referenced it as being a pace. Had it simply crossed underneath, I would have just said crossed underneath. But those were the only impressions. Then she and I walked down the shed, keeping those shoe impressions between us and the wall without stepping on them.
So those are not, I'm sorry.
But we did not photograph them. That information from that point was relayed to crime scene because we had not done any photographs of all.
Well, they were trying to preserve
at all
before the rain.
At that point, we were waiting on crime scene. So anything else that came through after that would presumably be crime scene that would have come and taken a look at the impressions, not us.
I'm trying to get two issues. First issue.
Sir.
were
Ask
those
one at a time
patterned
then.
shoe prints there the night before when you walked through?
The only print there were the flat, smooth ones.
So those, I'm not trying to belabor it.
I'm sorry.
So
But
those
you are.
pattern prints came after you saw them the night before?
He
Correct.
can't say
The
that.
only impressions were the flat.
He can
smooth.
only say whether they were there or not.
And you left and turned it over to SLED to process the scene?
While we were there, again, that was at some point in time while we were there that evening. I didn't leave until like 10 o'clock the next morning. At some point in time, that information was relayed so that they could photograph it. And I don't know whose prints those are. I would assume that they would have been agents that came down behind us and photographed or collected or did whatever.
So we were talking about crime scene integrity earlier.
Yes, sir.
Those aren't your footprints, correct?
The ones that are, there is a set that would be myself and Detective Rutland's,
But
but
not
they're
the
not
ones-
going to cross over
Right,
any
they're
of
not,
them.
the
That's
prints that
correct.
cross over, they're not your prints.
Let him
No, sir.
answer.
If it crossed over one of theirs, it's not mine.
Okay. Who took this
Let
picture,
him
do you know?
answer.
I do not know.
But it was taken, you think, the next day?
How?
It was taken relatively soon
Don't
afterwards because it still
speculate.
shows the smooth prints. So it was either taken upon daylight, because again, we didn't leave until like 10 o'clock.
Right.
So I don't actually know.
So is this best practices to walk over evidence before you photograph it?
Can't say that because it wasn't myself or my detective that did that.
I'm just saying, you.
If they were doing so while processing or while collecting, then and inadvertently stepped on one, it's okay because they have other ones to use. But, I'm sure that you would have to probably ask the person that stepped on
Oh, no, we're not
them
at
and took the
badgering yet.
photographs.
If one of
We're
your
at-
detectives had done this.
we're
you would
at,
not be happy,
I
correct?
wouldn't be
Questioning.
happy, no, sir.
Okay.
Not unless it was done after it was processed and for a reason.
Well, these are the crime scene photographs taken by, we think, SLED.
Who asked the person who took the photo?
Solicitor Duffy Stone took some pictures the next day.
Ask the picture. Who took the picture? Ask the person who took the
Some
picture.
agency other than yours, but certainly, nobody ought to be walking across this stuff, right?
No,
He's not going to
again,
answer you
like I
that.
said, they weren't like that when
Okay.
we were there, sir.
Let me then go to one of the other pictures you were showing a moment ago.
His point was nobody should
water-
be doing this, right?
Yes, sir.
That was his point.
These pictures taken of the water.
Back to the water.
Do you know when they were taken? I'm sorry. 189, 190. Do you know when they were taken?
I know they were taken that evening, sir, but I'm not sure if you're looking at stills off of a body cam
I don't know
or an
what you're
actual
looking
crime
at.
scene photograph. So I don't know exactly when, but they were taken that evening, obviously.
In this picture right here, water seems to be coming from the pen, right? From the dog pen?
It appears so, yes, sir.
And there's two full two full pails of water there for the dogs, right?
I don't know what they're
In the
for.
picture, absolutely.
Okay. And then there's some additional water in, and this is 189.
You could say there's 2 pails of
that
water.
I'm not quite sure where that is, but that's consistent with the water you saw that night, right?
Yeah, the water that I saw that night, and it was captured very well
Jamila,
on
I think
Sergeant
it's
Green's
the monitor.
body-worn camera. Came
I
out of
think
the
it's
first
the-
2 kennels,
Right.
I think it's the
traveled
screen.
down a short distance, and then over to where,
I think it's
at
the
the
screen.
time, Paul's body was laid.
So the water that was around Paul came out of the kennels, correct?
I don't know if that's where it came from, but it did come from that direction. There was, and I did not see a
He's
hose
very
or a
precise.
jug or anything else, but it did tail from those first 2 kennels down.
I think Dick's
to
just
where
trying to
Paul's
wear him down
body
so
was.
he'll answer the way he wants him to.
Let me.
He's not gonna. But I feel like that's where we're at. Dick is just trying to wear him down so he'll answer the way he wants. Not gonna happen, man. This officer is a professional. And his... They're showing something that's going to be under seal. Emily, why does he use the word butchered so much? I think one of the defense main themes is a father couldn't do this. A husband couldn't do this. So I think they are making sure it's clear how horrible these injuries were from the gunshot, to try to hammer home that point of it was you can't butcher your own family. Question: why does it take so long to arrest Alec Murdaugh? It took over a year to do this investigation and decide to arrest him, and I think it's because he's so powerful in this area.
This was introduced to
I think
show.
that's why. I think that's why. That's
what
my
shoes she
speculation.
had on, right?
Previously,
Yes.
yes,
Dick's
it
questions
was.
are wearing us
Now,
all
on
down.
the back of her leg, right here,
I'm glad I'm not there.
did you that night look at that dirt?
I did.
Did you see a footwear impression, partial footwear impression in that dirt?
I saw what could very well be a impression.
As if somebody put their foot on the back of her leg.
It was something out of mud that very well could have been a shoe impression.
Are they saying someone
On the back
stepped?
of her leg.
On the
As
back
if
of
they
her
put
leg.
their foot on the back of her leg. Do you know what analysis, if any, was done by SLED or any other law enforcement agency to determine if that
Oh, he's
was
looking at the jury, not the
a
witness.
shoe impression, and if so, what kind of shoe? Do you know?
I do not know, sir.
Okay.
Interesting.
Thank you. You can turn the lights on, and how do I turn this on? Like that.
I really wish we could see that photo, because I would be interested to see if it was, because it did rain, if it was raindrops spreading mud, like mud spatter that comes off from rain, or if it could be from somebody walking nearby.
So,
Because
let
he's
me
trying to
ask you- I got
insinuate
just a
someone
couple more
stepped
questions.
on Maggie with muddy shoes, but there could be a lot of other interpretations of that. I'm curious.
So,
What, if any? See, all of us did exactly what Dick wants us to do. Dick wanted us to do. Someone stepped on her? That's not necessarily what happened. But he wants us all to think that. That's why the question gets asked. The question gets asked, so we'll all go, oh, someone stepped on her? I need to know more about that. That was the point of that question, not to get an answer. So, life tips for the possessed.
Okay, so when you
Have you ever used asking a lot of questions? Yes, if I don't get an answer, I'm still going to ask the question
that night.
until they answer me.
for that
Yep.
early the next morning, had you come to a conclusion as to any suspect?
Had I come, no, sir.
Okay, are you
Thank you
aware
for
that
that,
the next day, the next morning, that your department issued a statement that said,
Ooh, statement.
misquote, "At this time, there is no danger to the public. If information is received that dictates otherwise, we immediately notify the public." Are you aware of that?
The Colleton County Sheriff's Office issued that.
Carlton County Sheriff's Department, yes.
I'm unaware. No, sir.
Let me hand this article up to you. From the Post and Courier.
It doesn't, him not being aware of it doesn't help it. If he's not aware, he's not aware.
Anything council's referencing?
There's an objection. So they're trying to say, again, I think, rush to judgment. How, if you haven't determined who the murderer is, how can you tell the public they're safe?
Stand for a moment.
We're all standing for a moment. Y'all stand up. I'm doing it too this trial. We're gonna stretch. My butt hurts. My back hurts. I'm also tired of sitting, and I got a longer cord for my in-ears, so I actually can't stand up. So, the public's not in danger question is very, very interesting to me because, okay, now I gotta sit so I can stream. It's very interesting to me because it could go both ways. It could go both ways. Here's why. If this family's being targeted, no one else is at risk. If the Murdaughs are being targeted, nobody's gonna. It doesn't matter. Unless you're a Murdaugh, you're not at risk. The general public's not a Murdaugh, they're not at risk. I love that the judge took a stretch break. But if you think he did it, then also, he's not a risk to the public. So it kind of goes both ways. It kind of goes both ways.
Okay.
Ooh, grabbing a cheese stick is even better. I hate to tell Murdaugh, but he's sadly delusional.
Media article.
Yes,
Posed was whether he
but
was
that's his
familiar with
attorney.
the statement made. He said no. The media article contains all sorts of information not in the record. And not
Oh, they excused the jury.
Being offered into evidence.
Your Honor, I offer into evidence the Post and Courier story.
Till the judge says we're done.
Next morning, 2021, which contains the quote, which I've just read.
Have a good dinner.
Not familiar with it.
I stood up, went to Dollar Tree and still a yawn. I want to go to Dollar Tree.
So, was there a danger to the public the next morning? Were you afraid? Some serial
Were you
killer was
afraid?
out there with a shotgun,
Are you asking the sheriff if he's afraid?
AR type weapon?
What? Sir, what?
I can't effectively answer whether or not there's a danger to the public when I don't have all the pieces to the puzzle.
We binged. Thanks, y'all.
I am fairly certain that statement wasn't issued by us, and the reason I can state that is because we were not primary, and it is a big no-no for us to issue anything when we're not the primary body.
That's fair.
So where that information came from, I'm unaware, and it was never asked for me to approve to send to the sheriff. It would have never came from us.
Okay, if that statement had run, if it did. in the
Didn't
Post
come
and
from
Courier
us, is what he's saying. Yay,
The
bing.
sheriff's department would push back on that and said that's not accurate. There'd be a subsequent story I haven't seen.
I wouldn't have, I can't state that.
We didn't
Only thing
release
I
it.
can tell you that when I left that morning, I didn't have any information that proved one thing or the other.
So when you left that morning, was Alec Murdaugh a suspect in the killing of his wife and son?
He's right up
When
on
I
that
left
witness.
that morning, I wasn't the primary investigator.
It's a good answer.
That would have been SLED.
So you gave the whole case went to SLED.
The
Yes.
whole case went to SLED. We were an assisting body at that
And you were
time.
never consulted after that by SLED.
That's not
I
what
was
said.
not consulted in the sense that anything was provided to me. We have assisted. I have stored vehicles. I have stored property for them. I have stood by while they executed search warrants. But it was not in a manner in which the information or
Sir?
knowledge they had on the case was shared
That
with
wasn't
me.
my
It was
job.
the exact opposite.
Go ask
On
somebody
the
else.
night of the murders.
That wasn't my job.
Did your department obtain a search warrant
We did, sir.
for
A
all
little
of the
bit.
property, the house, all of it?
It's a little bit.
It was obtained for the entire 1,700
It's a tactic.
acre property,
Including the house.
including the house.
And was that executed?
It was executed beginning at the,
People don't answer
Dog
well when they
kennels at the
lose their
primary scene.
temper.
But did you go to the house?
I did not.
Did your department?
We did not.
Who actually executed the search warrant?
So
The search warrant was provided
This is a
that evening
tactic.
to crime scene, which is standard protocol. When they come, they're going to ask for it. We have to
Crime
show
scene,
it.
SLED?
SLED's crime scene.
Okay.
It was given to them, and We stayed, myself and several of my detectives. Several were sent home so they could come in the next morning. And we stayed and assisted. I didn't leave till
I mean, why
9
do
or
you
10
do a
o'clock the next
haka
morning.
before a rugby tournament
But-
to get into the
Yes,
other
sir.
team's
The
head?
drone footage that you saw was the last thing I did at that scene that morning, and then I left and went home.
What about that night, when was a search warrant executed that night?
After that incident there, or that search warrant was executed, I did come back later that day and did a walk around of the property that we've been
See,
discussing
the officer's
all
getting a little
afternoon.
annoyed.
I have never been to the main house.
Never been in it.
I have not been in the main house. Not during this incident or any other incident.
Did someone from your department go in the main house?
Not that I'm aware of. It wouldn't have been, not as an investigator, let's put that. None of my detectives went over there under my direction.
So
It is.
So you gave the search warrant
You can see this
to
off.
SWAG,
It's
crime
picked up the
scene.
pace.
Yes, sir.
That gave them the authority
And putting
to go in the
pressure on
house,
this witness.
correct? That search
It
warrant.
gave
I'm
them-
waiting for
it
Dick
was
to just
signed
go,
off on to cover the
like I'm waiting
1,700
for it.
acres.
But I'm specifically talking about the residents.
Any structure.
This picks up the
Only-
pressure of the
They could have gone to
questioning.
the residence. They could have taken all his clothes to check if they wanted, right?
They could
Yes,
have. I
Emily
don't know
knows
that they
things,
did.
some things. I don't know all things.
We're going to talk about that later
I
on.
like rugby.
They could have, you're familiar with trace evidence, many
very much like a good
cases
haka.
where they check showers or the sinks to see if there's trace evidence of blood, right?
Am I? Yes, sir.
Yes. And do you know whether they did that or not?
I do not. Again,
Do you know that you can, with the appropriate technology, use, look at microscopic evidence, see whether
He's
it be
holding his
blood
binder
or
like he's
tissue,
done, but I don't think he's done.
Or if somebody tried to wash something, you can actually still.
Oh, yeah, the jury's still here.
A washed piece of clothing detect blood.
I want him
or
to.
detect
I want him
tissue,
to
even
now.
after it's been washed.
I want him to
Aware of
now.
am I aware of that? Yes, I am.
Do you know whether SLED did that?
I do not. Again,
But they could have that night.
Dick wraps up as
done
fast
all
as
of
I
those
do on the
things
live
under that
stream.
search warrant.
presumably so, and I'm not saying they didn't. Again, Mr.
Well,
Harper.
but they could have. I'm not saying they didn't either. We're going to find out.
Sure.
But under the search warrant your department obtained, they had the authority to go in the house, any of the buildings, anywhere on that property.
They weren't
and look
primary.
for guns, evidence of any sort of crime, evidence of, again, in the shower, in the sinks, trace evidence. They had
He was in the
authority to do that.
shower?
To answer your question,
I'm teasing.
as long as they stayed within the scope of the actual warrant that was signed, I don't have that search warrant, and Detective Rutland is the one that actually got it. If they stay within the scope of that search warrant, and they're only searching inside that scope, they had the ability to search structures, vehicles, only 1,700 acres, as long as they're
Well, I
within the
believe
scope.
we'll hear from Detective Rutland tomorrow,
Yes, sir.
and I'll ask her these questions.
Thank you,
Great.
sir.
Having said that, Your Honor, I have no further questions.
That'd be great. Ask the person who
Can you
did it.
redirect?
We're on redirect. Why didn't your department search? They weren't primary any longer, and that makes sense. They got a search warrant, but it was being turned over to SLED. They got the search warrant. This actually makes more sense and cleared things up for me. Thanks, Dick. It is more clear to me now. They got the search warrant heading to the scene. It became clear they were turning the scene over to SLED. Once the scene's turned over to SLED, they're not going to execute the search warrant. That breaks protocol. And it then would muddy the waters of the investigation even further. So now we have it more clear that once SLED took over, they executed a search warrant. Well, where did they search? And was Dick in his opening saying they never searched the house? Is it that they never searched the house? Did the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division search? This makes more sense.
The path you followed, were they consistent with someone who, with a person who started back beyond
Oh, it was both.
this area, and then where did they go from there? I'm asking where they went. Where did they originate? Where did they go
Love
to?
the All
Where did they end?
Blacks.
Objection. Sustained as to the form of the question.
Thank you. If you could, please explain to us where in your estimation, having traced the tracks, where they originated from, where they ultimately
Heather, it's
went
very
to,
fair.
and where they ended up.
It's very fair that huckers
The
can be
shoe
done at other times.
impressions-
That is very fair.
Crossed completely.
But I said before a
from one
game.
side
Why do you do
all
a
the way
huck
to the
before a
other.
game?
With the building to the right, going down, coming back the opposite direction.
This is the
The
point of
only reason
cross-examination.
I can say that we're fairly certain that
To
it
muddy the
started
waters.
from the grass side and went through, turned around and came back is because we never saw any impressions similar to that running beyond the airport hangar on the back side.
We want to know about the
And
conflict of the
location
truck.
Where, in reference to where these footprints ended,
Truck.
ultimately, and where
Truck.
Maggie's body is located. How did that line up? Describe how they lined up.
If you take a step back from there,
Perked
to
up at all
to the
blacks and
right
wondered
of
why
that
they're
image
talking
would have
rugby.
been
I started
on
it.
the opposite side of the hangar door would have been Maggie's body.
I want to know about the truck and the conflict.
Referencing State's Exhibit 190.
I need another pen.
Captain Chapman, do you notice blood marks here in the water?
Objection, Your Honor.
Leading. It
The
is
objection
leading.
is sustained.
It was leading. Counsel, it was leading as
Did you
fuck.
observe blood marks in the water when you were there that evening?
That also calls for facts, not
Calling
evidence.
for speculation. He is calling for speculation as to what discoloration in the water, if there is any,
That's right.
is caused by.
That's right.
I'll lay more of a foundation. Your Honor.
You've laid zero of a
Captain Chapman,
foundation, so you will lay some
Were you familiar
foundation.
with the scene as this picture depicts?
Zero. You've laid zero
Yes.
of a foundation.
Did you personally view
Dick's perked up now. He's
what
like,
this
ha!
picture depicts?
He's like,
I did.
You
Are
have
you
not done your
familiar
job,
with the
sir.
discoloration?
Bah.
And did you observe the discoloration in this photograph on two different
We all
areas?
perked up.
I did see that.
Was that discoloration, in your opinion, consistent?
Objection. He's not been qualified to give an opinion about this matter.
Yeah, because sir never qualified
I didn't
him.
hear the complete question.
Dick.
In your
Dick's
estimation, and
Your Honor, objection, and if he's going to pursue this frivolous line of questioning, I'd ask him to be excused. No evidence whatsoever.
We have life late in the day, sir.
In your experience and observation, having observed the scene and all the
Wait, where
matter
did
that
Dick
was
go?
there, were those lines in the
Wait,
water
where'd he go?
consistent with blood?
Did he wander over to
Objection.
yell at the prosecutor?
Objection sustained.
Thank you.
I don't need to be thanked for any ruling.
No.
Oh,
Sorry,
shit.
Your Honor. Expressing my gratitude is improper.
It is
appreciate
totally
that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
improper.
Just one last question on the. I
No, counsel,
understand,
don't
of
give
course.
up. Ask better questions. Dick, sit
Captain
down.
Chapman, are the substance there that you identified as having observed?
Counsel, do better.
Are they in a straight line? Are they in straight lines?
Yes.
Don't give up. Ask better questions. Don't stop there. Get your question in. It's a proper question. You've just.
Motion to strike his question.
No!
about blood
It's a
from
proper
the record.
question. He
The
just
jury
didn't ask it
instructed
well.
to disregard those questions.
I've informed the jury that they're to disregard.
The jury's not going to
any
disregard anything
question
now.
when I
You've
sustain the
solidified
objection.
all of this in their mind.
They were previously instructed on that.
Yes, counsel, they were previously
Yes, sir.
instructed.
Thanks.
But
Yes.
now you've put a point on it, and you're going to Streisand effect all of this.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any further?
What? We just bailed?
Cross-examination. Thank you, sir. You may step down. If
You just
turn
bailed?
the lights up, please.
Now we know what Dick doesn't want in. Get this in with another witness then. Ooh, can the judge ask Dick to sit down? Yes. Counsel, sit down. And it is
Ladies and gentlemen,
inappropriate.
we've come to the end of this day.
Oh, thank God.
Thank you all very much. We'll resume at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Have a good evening. Please remember you're not to discuss the case with anyone or allow anyone to discuss it in your presence, nor are you to engage in any or be exposed to any other information other than what you have received in the courtroom and will receive in the courtroom. Have a good evening.
Could you just put the camera on the judge? When the judge is saying, can we just, I want to see the judge. I guess not. And it seems like we're out. The audio is cut. I'm gonna leave this on a little just to make sure there's no housekeeping matters I'm gonna leave it on in the background to make sure there's no housekeeping matters. I'll do a summary in just a second. That got spicy there at the end. That got spicy there at the end, which is funny because Dick definitely lets you know the information he doesn't want in, and it makes everybody's ears perk up. All of us go, oh, wait, what? You don't want us to get into what? I can still hear from court. Can't see anything, but we can still hear from court. So I'm going to leave this open to see. But Dick was getting up into the space of the prosecutor, which is very interesting. Good. Put us...
We're in recess till 9:30 tomorrow morning.
I love that the judge put Dick in his place. He was like, check. And what he was checking Harpootlian about was the fact that when the judge did sustain the ruling, the counsel was like, thank you. It's like looking at a referee when he finally red cards somebody and going, thank you for the ruling. It's so inappropriate in court, though. You don't look at the judge and go, thank you. And the judge was like, you don't thank me for a ruling. And he was like, oh, it's inappropriate. But I think Dick is used to running a courtroom where the judges do what he wants. I'm used to getting my way. So it's interesting to me to see not getting his way. And that's exactly what we saw, was a whole bunch of not getting one's way. And I'm here for it. So we're going to give a quick recap. My brain is very tired. I'm going to give a quick recap. And then we are going to answer a few questions. And then we are going to be in recess, Law Nerds, until 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, which is very, very interesting. And the Law Nerds have sent here, let me pull this up real quick, the listing for the Moselle property. We can go over those in a summary in a moment. So thank you, Law Nerds, for sending those. I have them now because the property is up for sale, so we'll go through that. And I also got tagged. Let me just pull up some of the information we're gonna share together. I got tagged on Twitter in a layout of the property too from Becky H. Thank you for tagging me on Twitter. Let me just copy that and get it up to where we can see that too. So we're gonna pull up a little bit more of our own investigation stuff. The jury will have some pictures before them that we don't have. So we're gonna make do with what we have and know that this is not evidence. So the vampire didn't sleep. It's crazy. Somebody said, is this a bad strategy for Dick? No. Jessica, that worked for him. The prosecutor was trying to get into if there was a blood trail, though I think actually it was outside of the scope of cross, to be perfectly honest. I think it was outside the scope of cross. And generally when you do redirect, you're only allowed to address things that were brought up in cross. I don't think that came up in cross-examination, so I think technically it was outside the scope. And that's probably what Dick should have said, is this is outside the scope of cross-examination. Because once he started getting so fiery about the blood spots and the fact that he can't say what those stains are, then the prosecution knows he doesn't want that in. And then you just grab that picture for another witness that's coming in and have another witness say what it is. The witness has tested it. We are only 2 witnesses in. It's not like we're not going to get to other witnesses that could talk about it, but the jury perks up and is like, oh, it feels like, oh, you don't want us to know that. And Dick said very clearly, you can't say that that's blood. And the prosecutor, they've already been told to disregard the question. Humans have a hard time disregarding shit that they've heard, which is why the rules of evidence try to prevent things from being heard by the jury. It's why you do motions in limine. You do motions in limine because once the question is out of the mouth, the shit's out of the horse. The jury's heard it. You can tell them to disregard stuff all day long, but they've heard it. So again, when we say the shit's out of the horse, that's why you try to stop them from ever saying it. If you can't stop them from saying it, sometimes you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, unring the bell, or the way I like to say it is the shit's in the horse. And Dick was trying to intimidate the younger prosecutor, and the prosecutor stopped his line of questions. Dick was just up in there with those very fast objections, and it's interesting to see it. I'm interested in seeing how many witnesses Dick is handling himself, and I'm wondering why he's picked to handle he's choosing to handle these witnesses. It might be so that he can make the objections. Not that his questioning is great, but his objection and argument style is effective. Even if it's annoying, it's effective. So let us do a quick summary of today. Oh, let me pull question. Answer, summary of today. We had multiple police witnesses today that went over body cam footage, drone footage of the property. The questions that I am left with at the end of the day are, why was Maggie Murdaugh apparently pacing near the hangar that they were talking about? And, or at least did she walk out to look at something and walk back? How close were those footfalls to where her body was? Paul's truck, the F-250, they thought that Paul had maybe driven his truck up to the property, but that truck was later found the next morning after 10:30 a.m., so some 12 hours after police arrived on scene, down the highway somewhere else. Was the truck tested? Why is the truck abandoned? Who drove the truck down there? How did it get down there? Could the truck have been taken off of another area of the property while police were there when, I don't know, all of the family members showed up and left? Could somebody have driven that truck out? Then it was mentioned from the sheriff's department that there was a potential conflict because this was the Murdaughs with local law enforcement, and that's why SLED was being brought in. I wanted to know more about that. We didn't get into it. I'm very curious, but do you think Alec Murdaugh was surprised that SLED was brought in on this investigation? Probably. So why is the truck missing? Why did Maggie Murdaugh's phone get taken off location and Paul Murdaugh's phone was still sitting on his body, not in a pocket, but sitting? One of the officers said propped up on his back, which is very interesting to me. They talk about a change of demeanor when Alec was looking at a change of demeanor from Alec Murdaugh when the officers were looking at the tire impressions. I wonder why he perked up or had a change of demeanor when they were looking at the tire impressions. Is it because he thought they had located something that would tie them to the other person that was on the property? Or was it because he thought he had driven carefully enough to make sure that they didn't know that there were more tire tracks? So the conflict is very interesting to me. I'm just flipping through my notes real quickly to see if I highlighted anything else off the top of mind. The 911 calls were very interesting to me. They were very difficult to hear. But in the 911 call, we hear them ask about whether or not these could have been self-harm injuries. And Alec was very quick to answer, no, hell no. There is other information in those 911s I want to go back and listen to. Then we got into the officer being asked about if you would have had blood on you from checking the pulse of Paul Murdaugh, who again was face down and Paul's hands were under his body. Alex says on the 911 call, I've already touched them. When 911 says, don't touch them, he says, I checked their pulse. He said he checked their pulse, both. And then it's brought out through multiple officers that they saw Alec in a white shirt and shorts and he had no blood on him. But then in cross-examination, Dick Harpootlian asked the officer, so did you know he had blood on his shorts? That doesn't have to be true to be asked in a question. I think it was a red herring, misleading questions. So I think that was a misleading question where he said, did you know he had blood on his shorts? And he said, I hadn't heard about that. I don't know if there's blood or not blood. So it's very, very interesting. And we will see how this plays out tomorrow. But at the end of Dick's cross-examination, he goes, well, you don't know all these things. I'll just ask that officer tomorrow. Yeah, ask the officer that did the things. They're the ones. Ask the officer that did the things. But can somebody clear up this conflict? Maybe not. Maybe they're not allowed to bring it in front of the jury. Maybe they're not. Let's take a look at Moselle. We're going to go to the Twitters first, and then we are going to go to the listing of the property. So here is the Twitters. I don't know where this photo comes from, but thank you, Becky H., for tagging me in it. This looks like either Court TV or Long Crime. They both use that navy blue. Murdaugh family home. Entrance to the property. And again, we've got a gated entrance, and then this is all gravel. This is the home. This is where they say the phone pinged, and then this is up where the kennels are. So the trees and the grapevine would be down here by the house, and the kennels and stuff would be up here. It looks like they frequently drive up to the kennels because there are tire tracks going across this, but this is only part of this very large estate. Let's take a look at this property that is under contract, 1,700 acres, $3.9 million. And let's see if we can just make these photos big and go look at them ourselves. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. And then my voice is like, rah. So at some point we'll have to stop. So this is from the listing of the property. You can see how remote it is. I don't see any, we talked about, or the witnesses talked about how dark it is. And I don't see any external like lights. There aren't street lights or anything like that. This does look like it's got some farm property. It looks like trees in various stages of growth and then trees lining the drive up to the home. And we can continue on. So this is where you're getting out from the road. Trees would block this home and property from view from the road, it looks like to me, because they're deep enough that it would block that. Let's keep going. This is driving up to the property, and this is the home. Those are the steps. Yes, those are the same steps that that Gloria Satterfield allegedly fell on. I say allegedly because it's just not true. So thank you for sending the link. Law Nerd, thank you for sending the link to us an email, because then that's how we grabbed it. The team grabbed it and provided it to me. So thank you all. The research attorneys. Research Chat is Bay. Thank you. So these are the stairs. Beautiful home. You know, I don't want to comment on decor. It feels kind of morbid, but I like the I like the shutters. So when we're talking about the tin roof and the kennels and the what they called a lean-to where you could kind of drive through, this is that area of the property. Hopefully we have more photos of those outbuildings. Maybe we don't. Those look like crops. That is land, water, house, and a different view from the house. So a different view from the house here to the where the, what were they calling it? They were calling it a hangar, to the hangar down there. I don't know if we'll have more of this, but this is the hangar. This is an area where I think the equipment was, because the officers talked about a place where trucks and stuff could drive under and park. So I think that's the area. And then the kennels being over here. And there's two areas. This back here where my, I don't think I can zoom this anymore. I think that, no, I didn't want to do that. I think that's the she shed area. I don't know if we'll get better pictures, but they talked about there being two buildings. And we saw that in the filings that there were two buildings out there. More space, more water. Here's a little bit of a different view of, again, the hangar. This is a shed. This is the kennel. And then this would be where you could park and drive equipment under and through. I don't know if we'll get a better view of the outbuildings. Land, a hunting blind, land, water, lots of water, land. This, I think, is what they meant by the lean-to area where you could drive equipment under it. So that when they were talking about the tire impressions being on grass, now we've got tire impressions on grass, and we've got an area where equipment, farm equipment or trucks can drive through. That's what they were talking about. So let's see. Let's keep going. This is that area again. No, this is the hangar. This is a different building. This is the hangar building because they have a different shape. Okay, so this, sorry to go back and forth. This building here that you can park equipment under, the equipment shed or the equipment, I don't know, park is over to the other side. These look like the kennels back here. So this is that tin roof hangar. This is where the equipment parks. And let's see where we can see the kennels. Wait, we're not using this to buy a house. we want, did they search the water? I saw that question pop through. Don't know. The kennels are for the hunting dogs. That's correct. That is what we've heard. So this is the road, power, trees, property. That looks like another hunting blind to me. Another outbuilding, the front entrance, the drive up to the house. And again, this is a gravel drive up to the house. So there we go. That is the property. We had one view where you could see kind of from the house to the hunting areas, but again, these aren't a perfect rendition for our purposes, because these are for, selling. These are for realty purposes, not for crime scene purposes. But you can see the distance between the house and here, and with the tree line and the amount of treads, it seems like driving around to get here is more common because you wouldn't necessarily want to walk in the dark through the taller brush and through all these tree lines. You would want to drive in either this way or this way. So it makes sense when the officers were like, we were really looking for that. These, I imagine, are the trees they were talking about, because here's a number of trees, and then there's also trees back here by the house. I don't know where that grapevine is. They were talking about, maybe this is the grapevine, but they were talking about this. So from the house not being able to well see this because of the trees. So that, I think, is our best view from house to here. You do have this path of trees. You've got trees here and then over there. So that is an overview of the property from the realtor's website. No photos of inside the house, which again, I'm just curious about. Nothing happened in their home. Kathy said this is not their main home. Yes, this is the hunting home. They have a home, a hunting home, and then a beach home. That's what we've heard about today. We have a new meaning for grounds. Yes, we do. These are the grounds. These are the grounds. Question, why would a killer or killers go right to the dog kennel the night and kill them? Is there any evidence of anyone attempting to get into the main house? There, to my understanding, is no evidence of anyone getting into the main house or anything disturbed in the main house. Question, have you ever had a case where the investigators did a poor job? Yes. Yes, I have. So, yes, I have. Also, I've had cases where there are things that didn't seem important at first, and then as you learn more, were very important, and you're like, shit. I had a case where we had something that ended up being released and then ended up pawned that was actually a piece of evidence. I'm like, how did you release this back to them? And then it gets pawned. That we needed, what? How, what? Yep. Perfection is definitely not the thing. So, I'm going to get to a few more questions. We need to get to questions. So, summary of the day. Lots of evidence that we can't see. Some of that evidence may be photographed. Some of that evidence is under seal. And tomorrow's another day with lots of witnesses. How many witnesses did we get through today? 5? There was a pretty good pace considering how long one of those witnesses went for. So, the pacing is not bad. It can get a little tedious. But the problem is we see the big picture, and the testimony right now is very in the weeds, and we don't know why it's very in the weeds. Why are we arguing over a fucking puddle? Like, we don't understand why we're arguing over the puddle. Why are you all arguing over the puddle? That doesn't have any context for us. So we're just sitting here going, so it's wet? Okay, great. So let's get to questions, because we all have them right now. The home is already under contract. Yes, it is. What about the truck? We don't know yet. Hopefully we'll get there. Emily, it's not far-fetched considering Mallory was killed because of him. I don't know which part's not far-fetched, so I'm just not connecting, but my brain is very, very tired. But they are definitely, we're a cuddle puddle in the weeds. Question, if it took a year to arrest Alec Murdaugh, then what solid evidence did they have to charge him with homicide? Laura, I appreciate the question. I don't know if the two coincide. Like, if the timing of how long it took to arrest doesn't really go to the weight of the evidence. I think the cell phone evidence is probably their strongest evidence, but they indicted him. So they presented all that evidence to a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted him. So I think the cell phone evidence is probably their strongest, but I think the timing of a year is that they wanted to cross every T and dot every I, because I think they knew that the defense was going to not waive speedy trial, and they needed to have all of their investigation done, because I don't think they believed he would kill someone else. I don't think they also thought he would hire someone to shoot him, but I don't think they thought he would kill anyone else. I don't know if they thought he was a danger to himself, which he might have been, but they wanted to be ready for trial when they made the indictment. I think that's part of why it took a year. I also think that this county is a bit afraid of him. So I think they're a bit concerned. How much extra ADHD? I can't tell you what to do. I would never tell you to be extra. That you saw me chewing ice at the end of the day to stay awake. It is one of the things. I have a pellet ice maker so that I can. That's also why the fizzy water, it helps me stay awake. So Oh, tomorrow's Friday, thankfully. There was blood spatter on his white tee. They can't use because it was destroyed. Livia Jade, they keep saying there's no blood. So for this jury's purposes right now, there is no blood on Alec Murdaugh. That's all they've heard. They have not heard contradictory evidence. And it's not been ruled that they can't use it yet. So we're not there yet. They might be able to bring that in, but we're not sure. But if it is spatter, it is missed. It is not the blood you would expect if somebody ran up and saw their child murder and grabbed their child. Yes, now we know the state of Paul Murdaugh was horrific. We know that this was that the damage done to him was catastrophic. We know there was a lot of blood. I don't know if that would matter to everyone who ran up on this scene, or if he said he checked them for blood, or if you would touch them and your wife. The prosecution's going to argue he was trying to keep blood off of him because he didn't want to be accused of murder because he was a murderer. People who aren't worried about being accused of murder would be on their loved ones and trying to do something, even if that's an unreasonable thing to do given the situation. The defense is going to say he can't possibly be the murderer. This crime scene had a lot of blood and he had not a single drop on him. So that's the argument with the blood. We're going to get there. A little delayed. Maybe there isn't water evident in the videos that Paul took inside the kettle. That, Nora, is a very, very good point. Maybe that's why they're making a big deal out of the water, because when you look at the Snapchat video, there's no water in it, indicating someone hosed down those kettles after the Snapchat videos, but we know those videos are close in time to when Paul was killed. That's a very, very good question. Very good question. Necrotic, cousin Vinny moment. Could you see without glasses, through dirty window, through screen, through trees, through leaves, through bushes? Exactly. Captain Skittles is asking for the pickle. Do we did the pickle through the voice changer though? Do we all deserve the pickle? Do y'all deserve a little pickling? Do we need a little pickling? A little pickling today? I think we do.
And I think it needs to be through this voice changer. I feel like this is our palate cleanser from the day of questioning. I think we need the pickle. I think we need the pickle. Y'all asked for the pickle. I'm going to give you the pickle. We will need to name the pickle. I'm inclined to name it Dillygaff, from the meme of "Do I look like I give a fuck?" Because dill, like spelled Dillygaff. But we'll see. We'll put up a poll for the pickle name sometime after trial. I don't know if my brain can handle it. Question: do you think Dick's arrogant style of questioning can be attributed to Alec and make him look entitled to the jury? That's always the risk. That's why Dick told the jury, don't hold things against my client, hold them against me. I don't think anyone in this jury thinks that Alec Murdaugh is not entitled. I don't think anyone in this jury thinks that. I don't think there's even a question. I think this whole county is like, yeah, we know. we know. We do know. I wanted to see end of day Tic Tac drama. Yeah, I was bummed that they cut the cameras so short. We need to see those things. Or maybe it was the commentary on those things as to why they cut the cameras. I don't know. We want to see Alec being like, I'm sorry, deputy, you need to wait for me. I've got my Tic Tacs. I need to get my books. I need my notes. I need to talk to my lawyer and my sister and my brother and my mother and my cousin. Yeah, it was a lot. I think other attorneys made the witness files and Dick is trying to stay front and center. It's why he's stumbling and not sure where he's going. It's possible. And that often happens, but he would still need to review it. So is there a Google Doc or similar for the trial? I'm in a group that did one for the Parkland case and we had links to each live feed, timestamps, and a list of players. If not, I'm happy. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have a communal doc, but I do have a playlist on the channel. So Captain Skittles, thank you for asking. We did do that. If I was on the jury, Dick's constant long pauses would make it hard for me to follow his line of questioning. But his job is not for it to be clear. His job is to throw in those little zingers that stay and muddy the water. So it's more likely that there's two people. That's part of it. Those are the things that are his job. The prosecution has to make sure you understand their theory of the case. Is Dick making people perk up on certain info because of strategy to misdirect? No, I think he's actually fighting to keep some of this out. I do. Everybody is reporting that we're going to get the redacted body cam footage as early as tomorrow. Okay. I mean, if those in the courtroom are reporting it, I don't think they're wrong.
So maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I need it. I don't know if it'll help. But if it becomes publicly available, I'm sure that Court TV will have it. I'm sure that Brian Enton will have it. Everyone, all of the outlets will have it. So I'm not surprised. Paul was indicted on April 19th, pled on May 6th. Court ordered mediation for boat crash suit June 4th. June 7th, Paul and Maggie were found dead. He pled. Didn't Paul plead not guilty on May 6th? I need to go back. And look. I propose an official law nerd exercise regime: up, down, shift around, move from side to side, wiggle on your chair like you just don't care. We need it after sitting all day. I'm definitely going to need to get up and do the things. I can send you up-to-date satellite photo of the property if you would like it. Yes, please, Kevin. I appreciate all the law nerd help. My public email address gets to my team and we will see it. So nibble the pickle. It is an emotional support pickle. Question: did you hear that the Fireball lawsuit is suing over Fireball not being whiskey? I mean, as a Tennessean, I kind of am here for it. Like, it's Fireball, it's not whiskey. You can't call it whiskey. But yes, it's going into food court. I want to know. And maybe what I need to do is go get a couple, do an evening stream. We'll just do kind of an after dark. We'll talk about the Fireball thing. We'll decompress from trial. I will go get like an old smoky cinnamon whiskey and a few other cinnamon whiskeys and a Fireball. Maybe we'll do like a cinnamon whiskey taste test. And then I'll end up singing Fireball at the end of the day. Like, I feel like that needs to happen. We're all going to need an episode or two of Food Court. For today, I need to round up everything that we've done. Valkyrie Arts, no, I don't want to get sued for defamation. I'm not saying that Fireball whiskey isn't whiskey. I'm just saying that there's a lawsuit that says Fireball whiskey isn't whiskey. It's been alleged that Fireball is not whiskey. So, honey whiskey is so yum. It is. We'll just do it. We'll do a whiskey stream. But tonight, after I wrap, I will be doing the notes for Quick Bits and recording Quick Bits. So the Quick Bits can get released tomorrow, and I will start making notes for next week's podcast. And then I will try to work out. And then I am probably going to fall over and go to sleep. So we're going to need some food courts after this. Fireball plus Angry Orchard equals Angry Birds. I love it. Yes, please. I'm wondering about Fireball also. It's on the list. It's on the Fireball food court is on the list. Once this trial's over, we might do several streams of nothing but food court. It might just be like, we all need a minute. We need a break, and we're going to do some food court, and we're not going to do anything else. So that will be it. Do we know whether or how the other son was ruled out as a suspect? Not yet. To the best of my memory, he was out of town and provably out of town. So whether that was a coincidence or a plan, I don't know. It's weird seeing him in court every day. It's odd. Jack Daniels Fire is far superior. We'll add it to the list. I tend to like Jack Daniels, and it's made down the road. What happens if a juror realizes they can't look at gruesome evidence and has to close their eyes or turn away? Are they forced to still look at it later on? They need to review the evidence. So they're not forced to. But if it got to deliberation, and this is me hypotheticalizing at the end of the day, I could imagine a scenario where if they got to deliberation and they're like, I'm not looking at the evidence, the other jurors could even say, well, this is what we're seeing. Or it might be like, yeah, we're not worried about the bodies. We know that the bodies are there. We know that they were murdered. We know that they died. We know that there were shotgun casings. We're not worried about that. The jury might be more worried about, hey, I want to know how you know it's him. We know it was done. We know there's casings. We know there's bullet wounds. I want to know how you know it's him. That's what I want to know. And they might focus on that evidence more. Or that juror might say, I can't deliberate on this case. And then an alternate would get subbed in. Motion to call the pickle Delane. I don't know if I can, because I like the pickle. And I'm still a little bit like, what if anything about Elaine? Gun jammed after Paul took phone and got second gun. I don't know. The timing is close. And we're going to have to deal with the timing we are going to have those questions answered for us. We are going to have to figure out this timeline because the timing is close. And that is a difficult thing for the prosecution. How is this all getting done in this time? Where are the experts? And are the experts going to say at close range, any blood from the shooting would be forced with the force of the shots backwards and not forwards? I have questions. Some shotguns have a plug, aka limit of shells. Most is 3, hence why the shooter needed 2 guns. It's also it's possible. They're going to have to talk about it. I'm curious if the prosecution will bring up that a Blackhawk AR can be broken down into 10 parts in less than 1 minute by someone with experience. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to try to, I don't know if they will, and say it could be, I mean, there's a lot of water on that property. Is the jury going to get to see that? Maybe. They've seen the drone footage. So with that, Sir Richard Pickle is going on the list. That's pretty funny. I do like Sir Richard Pickle. Sir Dick Pickle. Thanks, Emily and Mods. Another marathon tomorrow. Yes, which is why I'm going to have to name. I'm going to have to go. Don't name it if you have to dill it. Dill it. We did have suggestions for dill with it. All right, y'all. Sir Richard Pickle Esquire. It's so good though. It's so good. Count Gurgula. We had lots of Dickle Pickle suggestions. We might just go with Mr. Dickle. Mr. Dickle's kind of funny. I like Mr. Dickle. I like Sir Richard ESQ. We'll have to figure it out. I'm too tired to even make a decision. We will Sir Dickle Pickle. Sir Dickle Pickle and Vincent Van Goat. Y'all are hilarious. Thank you. All right. With that, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm going to let the mods go. I'm going to go. We're going to have to do all of the things. So thank you for being here. We missed one at the end. Thank you, chat. Why is the defense being so hard on first police responders and how they protected and preserved the evidence? Because it's their theory of the case. Their theory of the case is, you destroyed the evidence for us to find the real murderer. There were footprints all over the place. People were trumping all over evidence. How, of course, you couldn't find someone because there were just people driving everywhere and people walking everywhere. I think that's where they're going to go with that. It's basically, you didn't do your job. See, we would have known who the murderer was if you all done your job. Their job, the defense job, is to poke holes. The prosecution's job is to make a case beyond a reasonable doubt that we can all understand. Today, we have a lot of questions, and I hope they start getting answered in other evidence. Remember, these are puzzle pieces. And with that, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a law nerd. Do the YouTube-y things. Don't forget to go watch yesterday's episode of the Emily Show podcast. Quick bits will be out. I have a second channel, all the things. You can find me all the places. Thanks all. Bye.
You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at The Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.